Chapter 88. While Chu Qingyan was still in shock, Xiao Su had already stood up and left. Chu Qingyan bit her chopsticks and looked at Xining, who was also stunned. She asked, "Did the Lord agree just now?" Xining nodded blankly. "Master, you didn't hear wrong. The Lord wants to pluck the stars from the sky for you." Chu Qingyan covered her eyes with her hands. Heavens, she must have opened it in the wrong way. Otherwise, how could she have encountered such a scene? But when her birthday really came, there was a sumptuous feast in front of her. She had seen or not. When Huang Yi put down the last dish, she sincerely said to her, "Ninth young mistress, happy 10 years old." "Thank you." She was touched. After a while, her parents were also brought over by the guards of the prince's residence. The family had a reunion dinner. This was the first birthday she really celebrated with her parents since she could remember. The memories of the original body did not belong to her. Mother Chu gave her a peace lock and personally hung it around her neck. Then she patted her shoulder and said with a choked voice, "I didn't expect you to be 10 years old so soon. Time flies. You've grown up. Mother is happy for you." Chu Qingyan leaned over and hugged her mother. Her voice was a little hoarse. "Mother, today is also your day of suffering. If you hadn't worked so hard to give birth to me, I wouldn't have appeared in this world. Mother is the greatest person in the world. I love you." In ancient times, due to the lack of hygiene, doctors did not know how to deliver babies correctly. Therefore, to the people of ancient times, childbirth was like the gate of hell. Many people had difficulties in giving birth and died because of it. Therefore, she had incomparable admiration and love for her mother. This was also the first time she had bravely expressed her love for her mother. In the modern world, Chinese people had always been shy to express their love for their parents. She followed this tradition until she transmigrated to ancient times. She regretted that she had never told her parents that she loved them. Until now, she took this opportunity to tell her parents the words she had hidden for a long time. Good. What a good child. Chu Machen's mother was embarrassed by her daughter's sudden confession. She wiped her tears and felt a little embarrassed. When Mr. Chu saw this, he ran over and hugged the mother and daughter. He smiled and said, "I love you too." The three of them suddenly burst into laughter. Before he left, Chu Machen's father took out a stone from his pocket and stuffed it into his daughter's hand. He said that this was an immortal stone given to him by an immortal in a dream, so he was giving it to her. Amused, Chu Qingyan accepted it and watched her parents leave. When everything returned to normal, Chu Qingyan felt a little regretful. She didn't know what Xiao Su was busy with today. He hadn't appeared all day. She wanted to thank him properly and bring her parents over to celebrate her birthday with her. Unfortunately, she couldn't find him. She asked Hong Yi and the others, but they didn't know either. When night fell, Chu Qingyan was a little discouraged. It seemed that Xiao Su wouldn't appear today. She couldn't help but feel frustrated. He clearly said that he would accompany her. Why didn't he keep his word? What a big scammer. Just as she was cursing a certain someone in her heart, a certain someone appeared. Chu Qingyan widened her eyes at the person in front of her. She suddenly pursed her lips. "Why did you only come back now? I didn't even leave any food for you." Actually, what she wanted to ask was why he didn't attend her birthday banquet. Chu Qingyan didn't notice that he was covered in dust, and turned her head to look a little willful. Xiao Su broke into laughter. Unfortunately, his smile was hidden under his mask, so no one noticed. He approached her and looked down at her from above. "I'll take you somewhere. Do you want to come?" Chu Qingyan was stunned, but she immediately reacted. "Yes." Xiao Su broke into laughter again, but this time, Chu Qingyan was a little stunned when she saw the hint of amusement in his inky eyes. However, she heard him shake his head and say, "You're going with this prince without even asking where we're going. Aren't you worried that I'll trick you and sell you?" As he said this, he bent down to pick her up. Chu Qingyan automatically reached out to hug his neck and naturally replied, "If you want to sell me, you don't need to trick me at all. You can just pack me up and take me away." Xiao Su praised, "You have self-awareness." That's right. She generously accepted this praise. "Hold on tight." As soon as Xiao Su walked out of the door, he lowered his head and said to her. Immediately after, he flew up and tapped the roof with the tip of his foot. landing on the wall of the mansion. He then jumped up again, like an eagle spreading its wings in the night. She never thought that he would directly use his qinggong to carry her. The wind was very strong, lifting up her long hair and covering her eyes. She looked through the gaps and saw the black-clothed people closely following behind them. She only recognized one of them, which was Hualing. The other faces were all unfamiliar. She guessed that these people were his hidden guards. She placed her attention on him again, and looked up to see the chin under the mask. That delicate skin, that perfect curve. It was hard to imagine that the face under the mask was ugly. Xiao lightly jumped up and down on the rooftops of the capital. Chu Qingyan experienced this rare feeling of flying. She reached out to grab her long hair that was flying in the air and giggled as she looked up to ask him, "Are these the stars you want to give me?" It was indeed very close. Every time she flew up and looked up, she could see the sky full of stars. This was the closest place she could think of to the stars. "We're not there yet." Xiao continued forward, but from her cheerful tone he could feel her mood. Xiao was also affected for no reason. His brows relaxed and his voice became less harsh. So there was still something good waiting for her. Chu Qingyan's heart jumped with joy as she waited in his embrace for the pleasant surprise to arrive. After a few jumps, they arrived at the foot of a mountain. Chu Qingyan thought this was the place, but Xiao did not stop moving forward. He lifted her up and easily headed towards the top of the mountain. Just now, the height of the roof was not too difficult for her, but now that she lowered her head, the entire town and village was beneath her feet. Her little heart trembled slightly, but more than that, she was curious. She felt that this trip would become the most beautiful scenery in her life. She listened to the sound of the wind brushing past her ears, and felt the coolest greeting in the mountains. She squinted her eyes and opened them. The person on top of her head had black hair flying behind his back. With the night sky as the background, the silver mask shone under the moonlight. But this time, the mask he wore only covered the bridge of his nose. She could see his thin lips, which were pursed with a trace of coldness. But under the sparkling luster of the starlight, in the dark night, it rippled with a touch of enchanting sexiness. Chu Qingyan was stunned by the thought that flashed through her mind. Wasn't the big ice cube always as cold as winter iron? Could the words enchanting sexiness be associated with him? Why did she have such a strange thought? "We're here." His thin lips slightly opened, pulling her back to reality. She followed his gaze and instantly widened her eyes. Chapter 89. At first glance, there was a towering building at the top of the mountain. At second glance she looked up. 1 floor, 2 floors, 3 floors. She couldn't count anymore. When did such a building exist in the capital? If there was, she should have heard of it. She got down from Xiao's arms. Her foot injury was much better now, so she limped a few steps before looking up. At third glance, the building was actually built with wooden planks. The wooden pillars were interlocked with each other, and there were all kinds of lifelike carvings on them. There were immortals riding the clouds, lifelike candied hawthorn skewers, carp swimming in the water. Everything was carved according to a child's preference. Seeing this, no matter how stupid she was, she could guess that this building was completed recently. The wooden planks were still new, and even the ground was moist from being plowed. She was shocked by this uncanny workmanship, and was also shocked that there was such a capable person in this world, who could build such an ingenious pavilion in such a short period of time. Big ice cube, this must have taken a lot of effort, right? She stood in front of the building, unable to find words to describe her shock. Xiao didn't answer, but at this time someone replied, "It didn't take too long, just 6 hours." 6 hours? This simply broke Chu Qingyan's understanding. Wait, this voice? She looked in the direction of the voice and saw an 18 or 19-year-old man wearing a black silk headscarf. He smiled and cupped his hands in greeting. Subordinate Mu Ling greets 9th Miss Chu. "You are?" Chu Qingyan looked at Xiao, then looked at the man who called himself Mu Ling. Only then did she notice that there were more than 10 men in gray waiting quietly near the building. This subordinate is the commander in charge of craftsmen, carpenters and blacksmiths in the Xiao cavalry. These people are this subordinate's skilled craftsmen. This time, the stargazing tower was built by them. Mu Ling saw her confusion and couldn't help but explain. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. Wow, she admired craftsmen the most. In the modern world, a high degree couldn't determine whether a person could live a tall, rich, and handsome life, but with a craft in hand, there was no problem in running rampant in society. In addition, the building's construction skills were superb. Chu Qingyan was simply in awe. Fast, accurate, beautiful. That's amazing. You guys are too amazing. I'll give you 32 likes. Chu Qingyan blurted out. Xiao Su originally thought that Chu Qingyan would be grateful to him, but he didn't expect her to drool over his subordinates. His face darkened, he reached out his hand, grabbed her collar, and walked to the building. This grab caught Chu Qingyan off guard. She flailed her arms and legs, feeling as if she couldn't breathe. How could this person change his face so quickly? He didn't know how to be gentle with women at all. Seeing this, Xiao Su threw her back. Her entire body landed on his broad back. He said, "Hold on tight," and jumped through the door. After finding the stairs, he quickly jumped through the stairs, going up one floor at a time. Chu Qingyan's head hit his back, and she suddenly felt dizzy. He was clearly thin, but just now she clearly felt that she had hit hard muscles. She couldn't help but hug his neck with one hand and rub the small bump on her forehead with the other. He really didn't know how to be gentle. At this time, when she was cursing in her heart, she saw the structure of the building from the corner of her eyes. She originally thought that the building was built in such a short time, so the inside would be very simple and crude. She didn't expect that every corner of the building would be exquisite. The wooden tables, chairs, teapots, teacups, vases, and even the flowers in the vases were carved out of wood. They were so lifelike. She once again admired the exquisite craftsmanship of the ancient people. Xiao Su carried her all the way up. She thought that if her leg wasn't injured, she wouldn't know how long it would take for her to climb up step by step. Now that there was a free elevator, this injury really came at the right time. Xiao Su's speed became faster and faster. Chu Qingyan could no longer see the scenery around her. The wind blew and hurt her eyes. She couldn't help but close them. When the wind stopped, she slowly opened her eyes and was immediately stunned. She couldn't care less about her hairstyle that had been washed, cut, and dried. She stared blankly at the starry sky above her head. She seemed to have arrived at a sea of stars. She could touch those twinkling stars with just a stretch of her hand. The wind blew past, and her fingertips were slightly cold. She lowered her head and looked down. What she saw was Xiao Su's slightly raised side profile. Under the silver mask, his exquisite side profile was faintly revealed. She was a little confused. "This is..." Xiao Su put her down and placed her on a wooden chair on the top floor. He stood with his hands behind his back. Zhai Xinglu, Chu Qingyan heard him and looked around. This was an open roof. Other than the railings, there was no roof. Looking down, the people at the bottom of the building were already the size of a fist. She suddenly remembered a poem she learned when she was young. The dangerous building was 100 feet high, and one could pluck the stars with one's hand. He didn't dare to speak loudly for fear of alarming the people above. He was probably the only one who dared to build a tall building on top of a mountain. She was touched by his concern for her. She raised her eyes and looked up at the sky full of stars. She then looked at the person beside her. He was dressed in brocade, as if he wanted to blend into the night. However, the aura he exuded could not be ignored. She couldn't help but think of the domineering CEOs described in modern romance novels. Then he pointed at the world and said to her, "You've taken over the entire galaxy." Haha. Chu Qingyan gave herself a thumbs up for her imagination. However, she quickly stopped laughing. Otherwise, Xiao Su would think that she was crazy with joy. She mischievously stretched out her hand, as if she could really pluck those stars. At this moment, a grape-sized bead was stuffed into her hand. Chu Qingyan looked at the person beside her suspiciously. She saw his back facing the light as he lowered his head to look at her. He muttered, "The stars you wanted." Hearing this, Chu Qingyan subconsciously looked at her hand. Because she was holding it, there was a faint light inside. She couldn't help but be curious. She immediately opened her hand. Suddenly, there was a bright light, as if a white lotus had suddenly bloomed. A halo of light bloomed, blurring her eyes. She waited until her eyes had adjusted to the light, before she saw that it was a round white jade bead. It felt comfortable to the touch, and was slightly warm in the palm of her hand. It was as if the source of heat would flow into her blood and meridians through the palm of her hand. Could it be that this was the legendary top-grade unpolished jade that was said to be warm in the winter and cool in the summer? What is this? She pulled the sleeve of the person beside her, and asked curiously. The starlight passed through the gap between her fingers and shone into her eyes. They were sparkling brightly, brighter than the stars. Xiao curled his lips, ripples appearing at the corner of his mouth. A protective bead carved from a fluorite cloud. It can be used to avoid poison, calm the heart, and nourish the body. Xiao explained. Fluorite cloud? She had never heard of it. However, she felt that the name was quite grand. Perhaps she was just ignorant. Is it for me? Chu Qingyan looked at him eagerly. Xiao curled his lips. What do you think? He rarely spoke to her so gently. Chu Qingyan forgot herself and hugged his arm. She said happily, Big ice block, you're so nice. Xiao lowered his head and stroked her head. Qingyan, happy 10th birthday. Chapter 90. When they came down from Zhaixinglu, she was still carried down on Xiao's back. Mu Ling was very familiar with the name Chu Qingyan, but when he saw with his own eyes that his master did not resist her, and even intimately carried her on his back like a child, he really believed that his master treated this little girl differently from other people. His eyes swept over the fluorite cloud that Chu Qingyan was casually playing with in her hand, and he was stunned. At this time he heard her tilt her head and say to his master, Protective bead doesn't sound very good. Can I change its name? Up to you. Then it's decided on you, Xingchen. Chu Qingyan giggled. Xiao did not comment. Then Mu Ling watched as Chu Qingyan tossed his master up and down. Little grandaunt, you're tossing an entire city in your hands to play with. Then he saw her casually stuff the bead into her sleeve. Mu Ling's eyes were about to fall out of their sockets. He used his eyes to ask his master, Did you not tell this little grandaunt that there are only 3 pieces of this fluorite cloud in the world, and one of them is the one in her hand? Xiao indifferently glanced at him. So what if he told her? So what if he didn't tell her? Mu Ling really wanted to gouge out his own eyes. If he had known, he would not have helped his master grind the fluorite cloud into a bead, and let this little grandaunt play with it like a marble. Chu Qingyan felt Mu Ling's gaze on her, and raised her brows. She looked over at him, but unexpectedly, he had already turned away. She originally wanted to establish a good relationship with him, so that she could secretly learn from him in the future. Their craftsmanship was really too good. If she left the Wang Fu in the future, and had nowhere to go, she could still make a living from this craftsmanship. At this time Chu Qingyan heard Xiao's cold order, tear it down. Yes. Mu Ling accepted the order and waved to the people behind her. Immediately, everyone swarmed up and flew upstairs. They quickly began to dismantle the building. Chu Qingyan was dumbfounded. In the blink of an eye, 3 floors had been demolished. She came to a realization. The sudden appearance of such a tall building on top of this mountain, with its speed and exquisite design, could very well arouse the suspicion of others. That was why it was demolished immediately after it was built, so that no one with ulterior motives would be able to get hold of it. Moreover, Xiao's identity was known. If the Sichuan emperor heard about this, there would be some criticism. She looked at Zhaixinglu, which had suddenly become much shorter, and felt a little emotional. This was the first time he was so close to the vast starry sky. This was the first time someone had really built a stargazing tower, because of his nonsense. She couldn't help but think of an illusion. It was about how King Yu of Zhou did such a ridiculous thing in order to win Baoxi's smile. And the big ice cube actually spent so much manpower and material resources for her birthday. Was it the same as King Yu of Zhou? Because of the time they spent together, she was no longer so careful around Xiao, or rather, she was no longer so careless with her words. When she came back to her senses, she had already blurted out the words without thinking. At this time, she saw Mu Ling stagger and look up at her in horror. It was obvious that Mu Ling was frightened by her words. She immediately regretted that she had been too bold. She didn't know if Xiao was angry at her analogy. But Xiao Su's emotions didn't fluctuate much. He said lightly, 6 hours. Using local materials, it doesn't take much material resources. And these 12 people have been too idle recently, so this king pulled them out to practice. Chu Qingyan choked. Cough cough. She looked around at the empty mountain peak. She could still see that this place used to be a dense forest. She felt like her knee had been struck by an arrow. Indeed, it didn't take much manpower and material resources. Mu Ling, who was currently directing people to dismantle, also felt like his knee had been struck by an arrow. Although it didn't take much energy to dismantle several dozen stories of tall buildings, their master had requested for quality and quantity. It had to be completed within 6 hours. They really wanted to hug each other and cry. Hualing walked over and patted his shoulder. They were in the same boat, so he said, "If you met her father, you would feel that your life right now would be perfect." Mu Ling had also heard about the Chu family's foolish father that could make Turin so angry. Thinking about how powerful he was, he couldn't help but look at Hualing with sympathy. It was a pity that Mu Ling never expected that if he sympathized with someone today, he would have to sympathize with himself in the future. Chu Qingyan looked around aimlessly. Her eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Where was Star Plucking Tower? Where did it go? Looking around, there was only an empty piece of land. Then she saw a pile of wood on the side. And Hualing, Turin, was currently directing people to bundle the wood into small piles, and then carry them on their backs. What are they doing? Are they destroying the corpses? Chu Qingyan pointed at Hualing, and the others as she asked the people below her. Recycling trash. Xiao Su turned and flew down the mountain after saying this. Hold on tight. Chu Qingyan obediently hugged his neck. Then she turned around to look at Hualing, and the others carrying piles of wood that were taller than them as they followed behind. She thought that if someone woke up in the middle of the night and saw these giant things, they would be scared out of their wits. The next day, there really were people who were scared out of their wits. Huang Yi looked at the yard and the piles of wood in the kitchen, and her eyes almost fell out. She had people send some wood over yesterday, but she didn't need this much. Heavens, how long would it take to burn all this firewood? Sitting on the bed, listening to Xining report Huang Yi's exploding expression, Chu Qingyan burst out in laughter. This big ice cube really was a thrifty youth. The peaceful days passed like water. What didn't change was that her parents would occasionally come to see her. Her father would still cause a ruckus in the king's palace. Those servants were angry at him, but they couldn't do anything because he had the king's little princess backing him up. Xiao Ran would also come to see her from time to time, but he had been busy with his studies recently, so the number of times he came to the king's palace had decreased. Speaking of which, it had been several days since she last saw him, so she did miss him a bit. What changed was that the weather became hotter and hotter. There was also her foot injury. After 2 months of rest, it was almost healed. On this day, she was eating with Xiao Su, but she was a bit distracted. Xiao Su looked at her. Don't multitask while eating. Chu Qingyan stuck out her tongue. She felt that this big ice cube had more and more potential to be a father. She ate 2 mouthfuls of rice and her eyes turned. She probed. Your Highness, my foot injury is almost healed. Can I go out to play? Xiao Su glanced at her. Chu Qingyan could see the disbelief in his eyes and immediately stood up. She spun a few times for him to see. Look, can't I run and jump now? Just let me go out for a walk. I've been in the Fu for the past 2 months and grass is about to grow. Xiao Su's gaze moved up and landed on the top of her head. Wait until the flowers bloom. Chu Qingyan choked. I'm just using a metaphor. Just let me go out to play. It's fine if you don't let me go out, but you'll play with me? Xiao Su raised an eyebrow. It looked like after a few months of rest, her temper had grown. She actually dared to threaten him. But after reading the parenting manual, he also knew that it was normal for children to want to play. She had been cooped up in the Fu for a period of time, so it was time to let her go out for a walk. Otherwise, she would quickly enter the rebellious stage. The parenting manual concluded that children in the rebellious stage were the most troublesome for their parents. Bring along the Fu's guards. Chu Qingyan felt like she was on a roller coaster and immediately jumped up. I knew that big ice cube is the best. Big ice cube? He seemed to have gotten used to this title after hearing it so often. Chapter 91. After the meal, Chu Qingyan immediately went to change her clothes. When she finished tidying up and walked out of the room with Xining, there was already someone waiting for her at the door with his arms crossed. It was actually Turin, the Turin who hated her the most. She was obviously stunned and asked hesitantly, "Did His Highness send you to protect me?" Turin looked at her coldly. "That's right." Chu Qingyan's excited heart suddenly felt like it was splashed with a bucket of cold water. She and Xining looked at each other and felt that they were probably going to freeze to death. Turin's hostility made them shiver all over. Chu Qingyan wanted to cry but had no tears. Could she ask for someone else? "Ninth Miss Chu, you're not leaving?" Turin was a little impatient. Chu Qingyan immediately responded, "Let's go." Thus, Chu Qingyan, her servant, and Turin's 2 plainclothes bodyguards made a total of 5 people. Although the person beside her always emitted an aura of hostility, Chu Qingyan was not a person who wanted everyone to be good to her. She knew that Turin looked down on her, but she was not a banknote. How could everyone like her? Moreover, she did not like people who were cold to her, so she just minded her own business. On the road, there were many women of her age who came out to play. Although women did not go out of the house in ancient times, in the dynasty she lived in, the restrictions on women were not so strict. However, once a woman reached the age of marriage, she would consciously reduce the number of times she went out. This was because they were busy sewing wedding clothes and learning how to take care of the house. They simply did not have the leisure time to go out. However, Chu Qingyan could still see many beautifully dressed women walking around outside, buying things. Green robes with wide sleeves and red hairpins flashing in the wind. There was no conflict of interest between people. There was laughter, and there would not be neighbors who did not interact with each other. This was a simple and honest dynasty. There was no rolling oil and smoke, no choking secondhand smoke, and no chemical pollution. This was a beautiful and pollution-free dynasty. Chu Qingyan sighed with emotion. Turin, who hadn't been paying attention to Chu Qingyan, heard her sighs. He couldn't help but feel that this woman was a little strange. He couldn't help but take a few steps back. Chu Qingyan had already prepared to treat these guards as air. She walked slowly on the busy street with Xining. They looked here and there, but they didn't buy anything. Everything was just for the novelty. Although Turin was impatient, he couldn't say anything because of his master's order. He could only follow step by step while maintaining a certain distance. Chu Qingyan walked in front of a vendor and saw a pearl hair clip that was quite pleasing to the eye. She couldn't help but stop her footsteps. She was about to pick it up and play with it when she heard a burst of noise not far away. She couldn't help but look towards the source of the noise. He saw several men dressed as servants surrounding something, and the leader of the group, a man wearing a peacock-patterned robe, was scolding something. She took a closer look and vaguely saw a petite woman lying on the ground. She couldn't help but feel puzzled. The vendor also saw this scene and said, "It's a sin." Thinking that the vendor knew something, Chu Qingyan immediately asked, "Boss, do you know what's going on in front?" The stall owner originally didn't want to meddle, but seeing that she was still young, his love for the young was aroused, so he said to her, "Do you see that man in the lead? That's the younger brother of Imperial Concubine Yu, whom His Majesty dotes on the most. Usually he bullies men and women in the capital." Chu Qingyan heard this and thought that it was the kind of thing that was often seen in TV dramas. She just never thought that she would encounter it. She wanted to go up and see who was being bullied. She had just taken a few steps when she was blocked in front of her. She looked up and saw that it was Turin. At this moment, his face was full of impatience and he looked at her disapprovingly. "Ninth young Miss Chu, you should go back. Don't meddle in this kind of thing." Chu Qingyan knew that she shouldn't meddle in this matter, but when he said that, she suddenly became angry. "As a guard of the prince's residence, shouldn't you step forward and stop this kind of thing? You represent the King of England." Turin poured cold water on her. "But this subordinate shouldn't cause trouble for the Lord. This kind of thing should be handled by the Yaman's people. As the Lord's subordinates, we should know that we shouldn't overstep our duty." Chu Qingyan wanted to refute again, but at this moment, the noise suddenly approached. She and Turin looked over. The woman who was surrounded suddenly broke through the encirclement and ran towards Chu Qingyan and the others. However, she tripped and fell at Chu Qingyan's feet. Those men instantly surrounded her. That woman was in utter despair. She raised her head abruptly and met Chu Qingyan's bright eyes. Instantly, she felt a strong desire to live. "Young mistress, please save me. I told you to run, I told you to run." The man in the peacock-embroidered robe smiled cruelly. He took the stick from the servant and was about to hit that woman. In a flash, Chu Qingyan didn't have time to think and raised her hand to stop him. "Stop." She looked at those men with a determined gaze. In modern times, people were taught from a young age to be willing to help others and help the weak. If everyone was selfish and only knew how to protect themselves and let those who did evil get away with it, it would simply fuel their anger and courage. That man stopped when he heard that, and looked angrily at the person who suddenly appeared in front of him. "Who are you? You dare to meddle in my business?" Chu Qingyan was still young. Although her clothes were of good quality and there were guards by her side, Fu Wanlai, who had always been domineering, didn't put her in his eyes at all. Chu Qingyan coldly snorted. "Bullying the common people and committing violence on the street. No matter who it is, they can come and say a few words of justice." Fu Wanlai laughed heartily when he heard this. He smiled at the servants beside him and said, "Another little girl who hasn't seen the world. Tell her, where is the person who meddled in my business now?" "Sleeping in the mass grave." "Haha." The servant looked at Chu Qingyan with an expression that said she was overestimating herself. Chu Qingyan didn't care about this group of motley crew. She first had Xining and herself help the woman up. As soon as she touched the woman, she saw that she was beaten up in many places. It could be said that her skin was torn and her flesh was exposed. Chu Qingyan was abnormally angry. It wasn't that she was a saint, but sometimes, when something happened, even if she didn't have the ability, she still wanted to stand up. Evil, someone had to be restrained. At this time, when he saw that Chu Qingyan, this little girl, didn't take him seriously, he immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. He angrily said to Chu Qingyan and the others, "Come, beat her for me." "Turin, if I didn't forget, His Highness sent you to protect me?" Chu Qingyan looked at these approaching people, and suddenly turned her head to the people who were watching the show with folded arms and leisurely smiled. She didn't have any awareness of the impending disaster. Turin was stunned. He immediately knew that Chu Qingyan had grasped his weakness. He didn't have to save that woman, but with his master's orders, he couldn't ignore Chu Qingyan. But the other party was Consort Yu's younger brother. He frowned. Just as he was hesitating, the people were already approaching. And then, the sound of the wooden fish sounded, and the fragrance of the Buddhist lotus grew clearer. Chu Qingyan turned her head, and saw a handsome monk standing at the corner of the street. There was a smile at the corner of his mouth, and he was chanting in a low voice. "Amitabha, benefactor, please stop." Chapter 92. It's Master Su Jian, Master. "Greetings, Master." "Master's grace." The moment the monk appeared, the commoners who had gathered around to watch the commotion all knelt down to pay their respects. Instantly, the atmosphere around Chu Qingyan became much better. Almost everyone was kneeling down to pay their respects, except for one person who was standing in the crowd. "Girl, kneel down. Master's Buddhist light cannot be blasphemed." Some people tried to persuade her, but Chu Qingyan did not do so. In her mind, she should kneel to the heavens, the earth, and her parents. Although there was a clear hierarchy in this dynasty and there were times when she had to kneel, she could not just kneel to one person. She bowed slightly and cupped her hands at the person who came. "Master Su Jian." "Benefactor Chu, how have you been?" Su Jian did not care about these empty formalities. To him, it did not matter whether they kowtowed or not. He was just used to people kowtowing to him everywhere he went. He knew it was useless to stop them, so he did not waste his breath. "Master, how have you been?" Chu Qingyan smiled and replied. Su Jian walked forward slowly, his monk robes fluttering in the absence of wind, as if he was riding the wind. People automatically made way for him. He smiled at the people. When the people stood up, Su Jian turned to Fu Wanlai, who was about to attack again. Benefactor Fu, please show mercy. Fu Onlai raised his thick brows. Master, you're not cultivating in Buddhism, but you're here to meddle in the secular world? Buddha, the great hermit, lives in the city. The world is his home. He cultivates in the secular world and becomes a Buddha in the secular world. Therefore, this poor monk does not meddle in the secular world, but meditates in seclusion. Su Jian put his palms together and smiled. Then it's not against the law for me to capture an escaped servant, right? Fu Onlai said in a different way, intimidated by Su Jian's reputation in Sichuan. When the woman heard this, she immediately knelt down in tears and said, Great Master, yesterday this little girl's closest relative unfortunately passed away. Today, I came back from the funeral, but unexpectedly, I was met by this evil tyrant. He forcefully pulled this little girl away. When this little girl refused, he ordered people to beat this little girl up. This little girl is not a runaway servant from his residence. Chu Qingyan glared at Fu Onlai. What a beast! Seeing this, Fu Onlai wanted to swing the stick at her, but he was pulled back by a gentle force. He took a few steps back, and only had time to see Su Jian retract his hand. Almsgiver Fu, greed, anger, infatuation, and hatred are the demons of the mortal world. Silence is a demon that confuses one's mind and messes up one's nature. Su Jian said with a smile. That's right, that's right. Bullying an innocent woman. What kind of man are you? Why haven't you left yet? Grandmaster is here. How can you be so rude? The spectators, who had been silent just now, were now snorting with anger. They treated Fu Onlai as a rat that everyone wanted to beat, and they spoke rudely and angrily. Chu Qingyan found it hard to believe. Just a moment ago he had been an indifferent bystander, but now he had become the embodiment of controversy. She could not help but look at Su Jian, who was as quiet as a mirror, and clicked her tongue. Could this be the power of faith? A monk could actually change the situation and control people's hearts? Fu Onlai saw that the situation was over, but he could not directly clash with Su Jian. He knew that Su Jian had always been an honored guest of the imperial family. Even his sister had to be courteous to him. There was no need for him to fall out with him over a woman. However, it was important to find a scapegoat for this embarrassing matter. Thus Fu Onlai glared at Chu Qingyan. Don't ever let me see you again. Chu Qingyan shrugged indifferently. His inexplicable anger was directed at her. Only then did Fu Onlai lead his people back the way they had come. Thank you, Grandmaster. The woman immediately knelt in front of Su Jian, her heart filled with gratitude. Su Jian helped her up, then said, Miss, if you have no parents at home, leave the capital and seek refuge with your relatives. It's your fortune to be able to receive Grandmaster's guidance. That's right. It's hard for ordinary people to even get a word of advice from Grandmaster. The commoners all agreed. The woman immediately kowtowed. Thank you, Grandmaster, for your guidance. Go. Su Jian smiled. The woman immediately left after thanking him. Xining saw this and couldn't help but complain on behalf of her mistress. Mistress, you spent so much effort to save her, but she only cared about thanking Grandmaster Su Jian. She didn't even say a word of thanks to you. You saved her for nothing. Chu Qingyan didn't care much when she heard this. If I saved her just for a word of thanks, it would go against my original intentions. Humans are born good. I just didn't want to follow my heart and save her. I just wanted to have peace of mind. Perhaps if she didn't save her today, she would feel bad about it in her dreams. Actually, her original intentions weren't that noble. She just wanted peace of mind and not regret it. Xining immediately understood the superficial meaning of her words. She couldn't help but give her mistress a thumbs up. Mistress, you're awesome. Xining gives you 32 likes. Chu Qingyan shook her head and couldn't help laughing at this little fellow who applied what she had just learned. Her trip today wasn't over yet, so she couldn't delay any longer. Just as she was about to leave, she saw Su Jian standing in the crowd and looking at her. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but stop in her tracks. Although this person was wearing a Buddhist robe and doing things like a fraud, this person had saved her before, so she couldn't just leave like this. Thus, she walked up to him and looked up at him. Grandmaster, I didn't have time to thank you that day. Now I'm formally thanking you. Chu Qingyan couldn't be blamed for always thinking of Su Jian as a fraud. It was because after he said those incomprehensible things in front of Xiao Su, she didn't have a good impression of him. She always kept a respectful distance from people who deliberately mystified things. Su Jian smiled. Benefactress doesn't need to be so polite. You've already thanked me once at that time. Chu Qingyan rubbed her head. She couldn't remember. Could it be that she had been scared silly at that time? However, she still had to return the favor. Why don't Qingyan play the host and treat you to a meal? Chu Qingyan asked casually. Actually, she didn't think that such a pure and simple person like Su Jian would eat with her. However, since he was here, she had to be polite. Su Jian originally wanted to decline, but on second thought he agreed. Tea is fine. Turan looked at Su Jian in disbelief. Usually, it was almost impossible for high officials and nobles to invite him to a meeting. Now this Chu Qingyan had only casually mentioned it, and he agreed. He suddenly felt that as long as Chu Qingyan was around, things would become strange. Chu Qingyan also choked. She had only casually mentioned it, so why did he also casually agree? Could it be that Buddhist disciples only knew how to recite sutras, but didn't know anything about the ways of the world? She was obviously just being polite. However, since words had been spoken, water had been spilled, so Chu Qingyan didn't hesitate. After this meal, she and Su Jian were even. She didn't have a good impression of Su Jian. It wasn't that this person looked extremely fierce. On the contrary, this person gathered spiritual energy. His handsome face could be said to be as pure and holy as a lotus flower. However, she wanted to keep a respectful distance from him because she felt that this person seemed to have a great impact on her and the people she cared about in the future. Chapter 93. Since he wanted to drink tea, Chu Qingyan found a tea house. Although it wasn't big, it was clean and tidy. What kind of tea would you like to drink? The waiter asked enthusiastically with a towel draped over his shoulder. After they sat down, Chu Qingyan asked with a smile. What kind of tea do you have? Oolong tea, Biluakun tea, Tiguanyin tea, and all kinds of flower teas. The waiter said with great familiarity. What kind of flower teas do you have? Chu Qingyan was interested in flower teas. We have jasmine tea, chrysanthemum tea, osmanthus tea, lotus tea. Chu Qingyan waited for him to finish before turning to ask Su Jian, who had been quietly acting like a handsome man. What kind of tea would great master like to drink? It's up to you, lady benefactor, Su Jian replied with a smile. Chu Qingyan felt that the lotus tea was not bad and suited his temperament, so she asked for a pot. The waiter immediately agreed and turned to prepare the tea. Chu Qingyan rested her chin on her hands and looked at the person in front of her. She felt that it was quite awkward to look at each other in silence, so she thought of a topic to break the ice. Great master, I saw you send that person flying with a wave of your hand just now. Is that the legendary inner strength? Su Jian smiled faintly. You can say that. Great master, you don't seem very old. How long have you been a Buddhist? Before the tea was served, Chu Qingyan racked her brains to come up with a topic. I grew up in a temple since I was young, Su Jian replied. There was another awkward silence after that. Su Jian seemed to know that she was looking for a topic to talk about, and smiled faintly. Benefactor, you don't have to deliberately greet me. Feel free to do as you please. Was it so easy for him to see through her thoughts? Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose. Just as the tea was served, she took this opportunity to cover up her discomfort. Xining went forward to pour tea for the two of them. Chu Qingyan picked up the cup and blew on it before taking a sip. She found that the tea tasted good. It had a faint lotus fragrance with a hint of bitterness. He must have put in the lotus seed core, which had the effect of clearing heat and detoxifying. It tastes good. Chu Qingyan praised from the bottom of her heart. When she put down the cup, she saw Su Jian holding the prayer beads in one hand and holding them forward with the other. His eyes were closed, as if he was isolated from the world. She couldn't help but chuckle. Master, you're not here to drink tea but to smell the fragrance of the tea, right? Su Jian faintly smiled. The aroma is a part of the tea. If you know the tiniest details, you will know the taste. Whether you drink it or not isn't that important. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. This person was too boring. Drinking tea was like chanting scriptures. However, how he drank tea had nothing to do with her. Anyway, she was in charge of treating him. Just as Chu Qingyan finished her second cup, the person in front of her opened his eyes and looked at her. His gaze was emotionless. Benefactress, there's something this penniless monk doesn't understand. Even the master has something he doesn't understand? Chu Qingyan was surprised. In the myriad worlds, there will always be things that you don't understand. Buddhism is a path of seeking knowledge and attaining the Tao. Su Jian didn't feel embarrassed by her surprise. Instead, he spoke in a natural and unrestrained manner. Qingyan is very honored to be asked by the master. However, the master is very experienced and knowledgeable. I'm afraid that Qingyan might not be able to answer your question. Chu Qingyan propped up her chin with one hand and replied indifferently. Su Jian smiled. It's fine. What this penniless monk doesn't understand is, when so many people were indifferent, why did Benefactress stand up? At that time, her attendants had been standing behind her without any intention of saving her. He had walked so many roads and seen so many injustices. It wasn't that no one had ever stood up for justice. However, at her age, she still dared to stand up as a young woman. This really surprised him. He hadn't expected that he would ask about this matter. Chu Qingyan smiled lazily. Master, I'm just doing something that I won't regret. What do you mean? He asked. I can't just stand by and watch someone die. Perhaps the master thinks that I'm overestimating myself, but I just thought that if that person was me and no one was willing to stand up for her, I would feel despair towards this world. There is no kindness between people. I believe in the butterfly effect. When one person stands up, it will affect others. When one person affects another, more and more people will stand up. She was just speaking her thoughts in the modern world. However, she knew that in ancient times, there was a clear distinction between hierarchy and inferiority. Those with power were in control, while those at the bottom were as lowly as ants. Who would care about kindness and evil? High officials and nobles cared about power, while commoners cared about food and clothing. Although her ideas in the modern world didn't conflict with those in the modern world, they couldn't find a point of agreement. Thinking of this, she felt a little sad. Su Jian was silent for a moment. Then he raised his head and looked at her. There seemed to be a slightly different light in his compassionate gaze. Benefactress has a kind heart. Thank you for the master's praise. Chu Qingyan smiled carelessly. Actually, this wasn't rare. In the modern world, many people would stand up because there were more good people than bad people. Moreover, in a society ruled by law, the bad people wouldn't dare to be so rampant. Even if they used their status to bully others, they would be exposed on the internet and become the target of public criticism. It was just a different era. She did what she wanted to do. Then if there was a second time, would Benefactress still step in to save someone? Su Jian continued to ask. Chu Qingyan thought for a moment. I'll make a decision after assessing the situation. After all, it's not my original intention to fight against a rock with an egg. I'll act according to my ability. I can't be reckless. Su Jian smiled. Although her answer was a little different from her previous answer, he could understand the meaning behind it if he thought about it carefully. Does Benefactress want to stop this kind of thing? Chu Qingyan looked at him in confusion. What does the master mean? I want to use kindness to change the world and reduce the number of incidents like today. Su Jian smiled faintly. Chu Qingyan's eyes widened. Why couldn't she understand what he was saying? Seeing that she was still looking at him blankly, Su Jian patiently said, This penniless monk will guide you into Buddhism. In the future, you will follow this penniless monk and preach Buddhism. You will use the Dharma to change the world. You will make good people more virtuous and evil people more virtuous. Chu Qingyan felt like she had just heard the funniest joke in the world. Someone was actually advising her to become a nun. If this were the modern world and her parents found out, they would probably think that this person was spouting nonsense. Her father would probably flip his hand and throw this person out of the door. Just as Chu Qingyan was about to laugh out loud, she saw the handsome youth in front of her smiling and looking at her seriously. Chu Qingyan's smile froze on her face. She said in disbelief, "The master must be joking, right?" "Monks don't lie." Su Jian smiled, but his tone was serious. "Why me?" Chu Qingyan couldn't help but ask. "Because you have an affinity with Buddha," Su Jian replied. The corners of Chu Qingyan's eyes twitched. Which eye of his saw that she had an affinity with Buddha? "Master, do you often do this, swindling some young boys and girls who don't know about worldly affairs into Buddhism?" Su Jian didn't get angry when faced with her questioning, dissatisfaction, and rudeness. Instead, he smiled and said, "You are indeed not the first person this penniless monk has converted." Chu Qingyan immediately believed in her own thoughts. As expected, he was tricking her again. Then she heard him say, "It's just that this penniless monk doesn't take in disciples easily. You are the first." She looked up in surprise and met his eyes. It was as if she saw lotus flowers blooming in his eyes. They were so noble and pure that she didn't dare to look directly at them. Chapter 94. Chu Qingyan snapped out of her daze under his calm gaze. She suddenly felt a little irritated. "Master, although I revere Buddhism, I have no intention of becoming a monk. Furthermore, don't you think it's a little ridiculous to say such things to a 10-year-old child? Who would want to be his disciple? Who knew if this charlatan would turn her into a little charlatan and swindle people everywhere? Besides, she did not want to be accompanied by the sound of wooden fish and bells for the rest of her life. Although the rain is broad, it is difficult to moisten the rootless grass. Buddhism is vast and does not help those who are not fated. Age does not matter. Female benefactor, you have the root of wisdom. It will be a pity if you do not enter Buddhism." Su Jian guided patiently. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. According to what he said, everyone had a root of wisdom, and everyone should enter the Buddhist sect. If that were the case, then the entire world would be filled with monks. Chu Qingyan wanted to retort, but seeing his firm attitude, it seemed like he really wanted to pull her into Buddhism. She really wanted to flip the table, but in the end, she held it in. She recalled everyone's reverence for him just now. She did not want to attract public resentment. Since he wanted her to enter Buddhism, she would have a talk with him. "Master, what are the benefits of becoming a monk?" Chu Qingyan asked. "It's not because of the benefits. It's because everything is empty. Greed, anger, obsession, and hatred are the 8 sufferings of life. Instead of being entangled in the world, it's better to enter Buddhism and cultivate one's body and mind," Su Jian said with a straight face. "No." Chu Qingyan raised her finger and shook her hand. "Oh, female benefactor, what do you think?" Su Jian looked at her seriously. "Everything is empty. That's your pessimistic view. In your eyes, everything in the world is but an instant. Things remain, people change, and people change. It's like flowers blooming and withering. It's just going back and forth from the beginning to the end. There's no change. The only thing that changes is the shape of the flower, whether it blooms or withers." Although Chu Qingyan was smiling, the smile did not reach her eyes. She could see that Su Jian did not agree, so she could not help but narrow her eyes and continue. "And in the eyes of us laymen, everything that happens in life is worth it. The people and things that we experience will leave a memory in our mind. Every time we think about it, it is very meaningful." "I feel that you have misinterpreted my meaning," Su Jian said with a smile. "Please enlighten me, Grandmaster." Chu Qingyan cupped her fists and said, "Because there is nowhere to go, the heart is born. All living beings will forever sink into the sea of bitterness. They will form evil karma and float in the sea of sin." At this point, Su Jian looked at her with merciful eyes. He closed his eyes and continued. "To become a monk and pay respect to Buddha is to have a tranquil and peaceful life, to be free from greed and desires, and to have a tranquil and free heart. The so-called seeing through the world of mortals is not pessimistic, but more positive and optimistic. It's not to see through, but to see through. It's not to do nothing, but to do it in time. It's not to ask for nothing, but to be content with everything." Amitabha. Chu Qingyan had to admit that the young monk in front of her sat there quietly and peacefully. Just by looking at her with his eyes that were filled with great wisdom, He had an inexplicable power that made people feel at ease. If she were a bystander, she would have been convinced by him. Just him sitting there was an irrefutable argument. Unfortunately, he wanted to pull her into his trap and become a disciple of Buddhism. She could have just walked away, but his determined expression made her angry. If she did not argue with him, she was afraid that she would not be able to swallow this anger. Master, your attainments in Buddhism are very high. In Buddhism, Qingyan cannot argue with you, but Qingyan yearns to enjoy herself in the world of mortals, not to see through the world of mortals. I live in the world of mortals and I like it. I like it. Sometimes I'm happy, and sometimes I'm unrestrained. I feel that life is unpredictable, which is surprising and interesting. If I really become a monk, my family will be far away, my friends will be far away, and I will be alone in my pursuit of Buddha. When I'm cold, no one will care for me. When I'm sick, no one will take care of me, and I'll die alone. In the face of Chu Qingyan's provocation and disrespect, Su Jian frowned slightly. Benefactress, becoming a monk is not the same as being alone. On the path of seeking Buddha, one's heart will not feel lonely. As a disciple of Buddhism, there is camaraderie and mutual support. You don't have to worry. If you enter Buddhism and take this poor monk as your master, this poor monk will definitely support you. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Jian saw her crafty eyes looking at him. Su Jian had a faint feeling of unease in his heart, but he heard her speak. Master, didn't you say that the 6 senses are pure and have no 7 emotions and 6 desires? You don't need emotions, but you feel pity for Qingyan. Don't you think that's already going against Buddhism? Chu Qingyan's bright eyes turned as she smiled back at him. Su Jian couldn't help but find it a little funny. She was beating around the bush to lure him into her trap. Although she was young, she was definitely smart. She had originally wanted to wait for him to be defeated, but unexpectedly, his eyes were smiling clearly. She knew that he had already seen through her intentions. The smile on Chu Qingyan's face froze, then she narrowed her eyes again. Then, to everyone's surprise, she waved her hand to call the waiter over. Dear customer, is there anything else you need? The waiter asked with a warm smile. Su Jian couldn't understand why Chu Qingyan had said such a good thing, so he quietly waited for her to speak. He saw Chu Qingyan reveal a sly smile, but it quickly disappeared. She said to the waiter in a clear voice, Waiter, do you have pork jerky and beef jerky here? Yes, yes, yes. Not only that, we also have crispy chicken wings, specially made duck head, stir-fried duck gizzards. The waiter immediately began listing out his treasures. Okay. Give me everything you just said. Chu Qingyan waved her hand and said generously. The waiter immediately accepted the order happily and left. After Chu Qingyan finished giving her orders, she looked up and coincidentally saw Su Jian's frown. She couldn't help but be in a good mood. Soon, the dishes were placed one by one. Benefactress, what is the meaning of this? Su Jian looked at the table full of dishes and finally looked at her. If I enter Buddhism, can Qingyan still have a stomach full of food? Only people in the secular world can enjoy these dishes. Master, do you want to try a bite? She held out the chicken wing to tempt him. Su Jian only closed his eyes and recited, Ba, Buddha is merciful. Chu Qingyan chuckled and took a big bite before continuing, That's right. Master, what I want to say is that when a person lives, they must be happy when they are complacent. Don't let a golden goblet face the moon. Enjoy yourself when you are happy. When you are sad, laugh loudly. When you are sad, cry loudly. Don't want to live a dull life in vain. Perhaps you're right. I've seen through the world of mortals. My 6 senses are pure, no sorrow, no joy, no love, no hate. I won't be burdened by fame and fortune. Won't be plagued by greed, anger, stupidity, and hate. But that is not the life Qingyan yearns for. Qingyan wants freedom. If I fall, I will get up again. I have never lost my desire for life, nor have I lost my despair for love. I am happy because of love and feel sorry for myself because of pain. I don't need Buddha to save me. I only need to save myself. Su Jian widened his eyes and watched her put down the teacup. Although her lips were stained with oil, her eyes were sparkling. He suddenly didn't know how to persuade her. At this moment, Turin, who had gone out at some point, returned. He said to Chu Qingyan, Lord is already at the door. He is waiting for Miss to go back together. Chapter 95. What? The big ice cube actually came to pick her up? This was simply too amazing. Chu Qingyan couldn't restrain her emotions and gave Su Jian an apologetic smile. Great master, someone from the residence is here. I have to go back first. If there's a chance in the future, I'll come back to discuss Buddhism. Su Jian knew that it would be difficult to convince her today, so he dismissed the idea. He put his palms together and said, "Benefactress, please go ahead." Chu Qingyan nodded, and then called the waiter over to settle the bill. The waiter giggled and declined, saying that it was the owner's honor to see great master Su Jian's rare patronage and so on. Chu Qingyan almost fell asleep listening to him. In short, she didn't have to pay for this meal. Thus, Chu Qingyan happily bid farewell to Su Jian, and quickly led Xining and the others out of the door. Su Jian looked at the table full of meat, and then glanced at the figure leaving with light steps. A faint trace of worry appeared on his face. Why do you want me to enter Buddhism? She had asked him earlier, but he hadn't answered her directly. Why do you want me to enter Buddhism? He couldn't answer this question. The Buddhist lotus blooms in the mud. If one's heart is pure, one will not be tainted. She was still young, but she was already in the mud. Whether she could emerge from the mud untainted, the answer would be revealed many years later. However, he couldn't bet the world on it. The divination showed that she would stir up a storm of blood in Sichuan, and even the world. Apart from this, there was another tribulation. This tribulation was related to him. Su Jian stood up and walked out amidst the waiter's eager smiles. At the corner of the street, he looked at the small figure bouncing in front of the handsome man. Who would have guessed that this young and tender girl was his fiery phoenix? Su Jian retracted his gaze and turned around, refusing to leave. Big ice cube, why are you here? Chu Qingyan put her hands behind her back and leaned forward. Her face was filled with the innocence of a child. Xiao Su's gaze peered through the gauze hat and landed on the noble figure leaving the street corner. He said casually, "I just happened to pass by after court." Chu Qingyan choked. Alright, reality was so cruel. She thought that he had specially come to pick her up. Xining saw her master's colorful expression and couldn't help but purse her lips and laugh. Her master was really stupid. If Lord hadn't specially come to pick her up, he would have directly gone home after court. Why would he wait for her at the door? After a moment of disappointment, Chu Qingyan regained her smile and followed behind him. Let's go home then. I'm hungry. When Xiao Su heard her say that she was hungry, he turned to look at her. He glanced at Xining, Tu Ling, and the others, then frowned. What did you play today? Why were his hands empty? He didn't buy anything. I strolled around, and even went to drink flower tea. Lotus tea. It's not bad, but the store didn't charge me. Chu Qingyan thought back to today's trip and seriously replied. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. Could it be that the Wang Fu didn't give her a monthly allowance, so she didn't buy anything? Even the tea she drank was treated by the store? He, the great lord of Sichuan country, couldn't even raise a child. If this got out, he would be a joke. He would have the steward give her a monthly allowance when he got back. His people could only be willful and squander money. They didn't have the right to wrong themselves. After Chu Qingyan finished replying, the person beside her didn't reply for a long time. She couldn't help but raise her head to look at him. It was a pity that he was wearing a veil, and she couldn't see his expression. She only knew that his gaze on her seemed to contain a trace of displeasure. She didn't know where she said the wrong thing. She couldn't help rubbing her nose and didn't make a sound. At this time, when they arrived in front of Xiao Su's carriage, there was a sudden gust of wind with the fragrance of a woman's rouge. Just as Chu Qingyan was wondering where this fragrance was coming from, a pleasant female voice came from the right side. His Royal Highness. It really is a coincidence. I didn't think that I would meet you here. This voice contained a bit of excitement, but it also hid a nervous surprise. Chu Qingyan heard this and stopped her steps. She looked towards the source of the voice and saw a woman wearing a dark green robe. She was accompanied by two servant girls as they walked over with light steps. When they came closer, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh. What a beautiful woman with long eyebrows and a slight smile. At this time, she saw that her gaze was firmly on Xiao Su. Even if Chu Qingyan had never been in love, she could see that the woman in front of her liked Xiao Su. But Chu Qingyan was very curious. Xiao Su, this big block of ice, would take the initiative to strike up a conversation with a woman. Moreover, it was a woman as beautiful as a flower. How would he deal with it? Who are you? Xiao Su was a little surprised that he had been recognized outside, but he didn't take it to heart. He only looked at the person with a sharp gaze. As soon as he said this, Chu Qingyan clearly saw that the woman's expression changed slightly. She seemed to be a little frustrated, but she quickly returned to normal. With a smile, she said softly, "This little girl's surname is Yao, and my name is Ruo. I am the granddaughter of the current Grand Tutor. Previously at the palace banquet, I met Your Highness a few times. It is normal that Your Highness doesn't remember this little girl. Today, this little girl saw the carriage of the King of England's residence, and guessed that Your Highness was nearby. I didn't expect to see Your Highness appear when I turned around. I hope Your Highness doesn't mind." In just a few words, she introduced herself, led to the reason why they knew each other, and also explained why she was here. Chu Qingyan smacked her lips. This woman's eloquence wasn't bad. She knew when to advance and retreat. She didn't know what the big block of ice who was hit on would think. She was very curious. "Amen," Xiao Su indifferently replied. Yao Ruo saw that the other party's tone was cold, and that he was about to leave. She felt anxious and pursed her lips. She thought about how to break this awkward situation. Suddenly, she had an idea and her lips curled up. She took a step forward and curtsied. "Your Highness, Ruo usually has nothing to do and likes to write poems. Would it be possible for me to have an opportunity to discuss it with Your Highness? This prince is not a civil official. Miss Yao has found the wrong person." Xiao Su was still cold. Most people would politely respond to such a beautiful woman with both talent and appearance. Even if they weren't good enough, they would still say a few perfunctory words. However, Chu Qingyan didn't expect that the big block of ice would be so simple and direct. Yao Ruo choked. Although she was a little hurt, she still persevered and didn't give up. "Ruo doesn't know martial arts. Otherwise, I would be able to discuss swords and sabers with Your Highness. I heard that Your Highness is stationed at the border all year round. I wonder if the scenery beyond the Great Wall is more spectacular and beautiful than the scenery in our capital city?" Xiao Su frowned. This prince is fighting wars and protecting the country. This prince isn't enjoying life. I'm afraid that Miss Yao has found the wrong person. Yao Ruo's delicate body couldn't withstand his cold tone. Her face immediately paled. Talking to strangers was already his limit. If it wasn't for the fact that she was Grand Tutor Yao's grandson, he would have already left. "The children at home don't starve. Forgive this prince for not being able to accompany you." After speaking, Xiao Su didn't wait for the other party to pass by. The children at home? Was he talking about her? Chu Qingyan blinked. At this moment, as if to verify her thoughts, Xiao Su stopped and turned around to look at her. His tone was impatient. "Aren't you hungry? Hurry up." Oh, I'm coming." Chu Qingyan saw that Yao Ruo's expression was a little ugly and immediately ran toward Xiao Su. Chapter 96. After climbing into the carriage, Chu Qingyan turned around to look at Yao Ruo, who was standing by the roadside. She happened to meet Yao Ruo's jealous gaze. Chu Qingyan shuddered. She clearly didn't do anything or say anything. She wasn't the one who rejected Yao Ruo, so why did Yao Ruo hate her? Could it be that she was staring at the wrong person? Chu Qingyan didn't think much of it and slipped into the carriage. She just happened to meet Xiao Su's gaze. At this moment, Xiao Su had already taken off his veil, revealing his deep, dark eyes. Chu Qingyan guffawed, probably because he was impatient with her speed. She quickly sat down in front of him. The wheels rolled and left in front of Yao Ruo. Yao Ruo's maidservant, Tao Hong, said indignantly, "That King of England is too rude. Miss spoke to him so nicely, but he didn't know what was good for him. He's just a lord who has fallen out of favor, yet he dares to give Miss a hard time." "You're not allowed to say that." Yao Inrua angrily glared at the maidservant. What do you know? The King of England is a famous general. It's normal for him to be arrogant. Besides, he only forgot about me. As long as I appear in front of him more often in the future, he will definitely remember me. Tao Hong immediately lowered her head and begged for mercy. Miss, this servant knows her mistake. On the other hand, the other servant girl, Lu Yi, had a fawning smile as she said, Young miss, don't worry. With your celestial beauty and innate talent, you will definitely make King Ying treat you differently. These words made Yao Yingruo's heart burst with joy. Her battered mood recovered quite a bit. Then, her eyes were filled with shyness and a hint of determination. I will definitely make King Ying treat me differently. She was the eldest granddaughter of the imperial tutor's concubine. Her family was prominent, her appearance wasn't bad, and she was famous for her talent. How was she not worthy of him? With such pride, Yao Inruo coldly looked at the carriage. Chu Qingyan, is it? What is she? How can she be worthy of His Highness? What a joke! That's right, that's right. Tao Hong and Lu Yi agreed. The carriage gradually moved further and further away. Yao Yingruo turned around and left with the two maids. At this moment, Chu Qingyan was sitting upright and still with her hands on her knees. From time to time, she would turn the pearl and secretly size up the person in front of her. Xiao couldn't ignore her burning gaze even if he didn't want to. In the end, he simply put down the book and stared at the person in front of him who wanted to look away. If you want to ask, then ask. Chu Qingyan chuckled. Her serious face suddenly changed into a gossipy one. Your Highness, what do you think of that woman just now? This prince didn't notice. Xiao didn't expect her to ask this and raised his brows. Oh, then does your Highness treat strangers like this? Chu Qingyan continued. Something like that. Xiao replied calmly. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she tilted her head and her posture wasn't as serious as before. She asked curiously, Your Highness, you're about to reach the age of 20. Do you have any close female friends or a woman that you like? Xiao gaze immediately became impatient. You're so young, yet you don't ask about the 4 books and 5 classics. Instead, you're asking for a beating? The person in front of her suddenly changed from being a big ice cube to being a strict father. This made Chu Qingyan a little uncomfortable. However, after being together for a long time, she also knew that he wouldn't hit her. Thus, her courage grew and she immediately leaned over and hugged his arm. Her voice was cute and naive as she said, I'm just curious. Don't try to change the topic. Xiao was instantly angry and amused. When did he give her the courage to come over when he was unhappy? If it was his subordinates, they would have already kept a respectful distance. How could they be like her who didn't know what was good for her? However, because of her clinginess, he didn't feel so impatient. Nothing. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. Nothing? You don't have a close female friend or a girl you like? Faced with the person beside him who wanted a yard after getting an inch, Xiao felt a headache coming on. Neither. Xiao pulled his hand out of her arms and lazily leaned against the pillow as he replied indifferently. Why? Chu Qingyan expressed her surprise. Xiao frowned because of her tone. What's so strange about that? Ben Wang is always outside protecting the country. I don't have the heart for these romantic affairs. Chu Qingyan instantly widened her eyes. But when soldiers are outside, don't they have many girls to serve them? When she finished speaking, Xiao narrowed his eyes and looked at her sternly. Is this something a girl should know? Who told you these things? Xiao was enraged. She was a pure and innocent young lady. Yet she actually knew about the filthy affairs of the military prostitutes. If he knew who had been whispering these things to her, he would definitely punish them severely. Chu Qingyan rarely saw him angry, so she immediately felt the entire carriage freeze. In order to stop the cold air from spreading, she bravely threw herself at him and hugged his arm. She giggled. No one taught me, I just heard it from outside. In the future, don't listen to other people's nonsense. Xiao didn't reject her approach and the cold air dissipated a lot, but his tone was still stern. Yes, Your Highness. Chu Qingyan immediately raised her hand and placed it beside her temple. Looking very obedient. Although Xiao Su didn't know what she meant by this action, he felt that she looked funny and cute. Moreover, when these words came out of her mouth, his heart softened. Feeling that the big ice block was no longer angry, Chu Qingyan continued on her path of gossip. If she were to evaluate her actions at that time, there were only a few words that were suitable for her. If she didn't do it, she wouldn't have died. Then, Your Highness, in the future, when you are in the capital, those women who admire you will take the opportunity to get to know you. Perhaps you will be able to find a woman to spend the rest of your life with. Chu Qingyan blinked her eyes. She had already completely forgotten her own identity. She simply felt that the big ice block, who sacrificed his own happiness for the country, should be blessed by the heavens. Although she had heard many bad rumors about him before, after interacting with him for real, she found that the rumors were wrong. The big ice block was a rare and precious man. Xiao Su closed his eyes and rested. He didn't care and said, "Not interested." Why not? Chu Qingyan didn't understand. Could it be that she didn't have the potential to be a matchmaker? Women are too annoying. When Xiao Su thought of those beautiful women, he was a bit annoyed. Chu Qingyan thought of something in shock. She had heard the servants say that the big ice block never approached women. Then did he have something that was hard to say? Or was he interested in men? Heavens, this news was too shocking. There was no more chatter in his ears. Xiao Su seemed to have thought of something. He opened his eyes and looked at her with a smile that wasn't a smile. "Yatu, don't forget your identity." "What identity can I have?" Chu Qingyan didn't react. "You are the King of England's imperial consort personally bestowed by the emperor. So, it's enough for this king to raise a little princess consort." Xiao Su continued to close his eyes to rest, ignoring the other's excitement. "But I'm still a child. This king isn't in a hurry." "What does this have to do with you being in a hurry? Also, why did the conversation turn to this topic?" Chu Qingyan wanted to cry, but no tears came out. One didn't understand romance, the other didn't know anything about romance. So the two of them talked like chickens and ducks, but they were harmonious. Who said that? If you like a person, it's best to start from a baby. Chapter 97. They chatted all the way back to the King of England's residence. The servants came to lead the carriage, but they saw Chu Qingyan in their lord's carriage. Everyone was shocked. The lord had actually personally gone to pick up the young princess consort. "Lord, young princess consort." The servants immediately bowed respectfully. Ever since the lord had offended the popular people of the inner courtyard, Hong Yi and Zi, for Chu Qingyan, the onlookers finally understood that this Chu Qingyan was extremely favored by the lord. They could offend anyone, but they could not offend this little ancestor. Thus, everyone changed the way they addressed her. Chu Qingyan also changed from 9th Miss Chu to young princess consort. This form of address represented that Chu Qingyan's identity was recognized. However, Chu Qingyan did not feel anything. She only felt that the 3 words young princess consort were shorter and easier to call than her name. Once they got off the carriage, Xiao Su walked in front with large strides. When Chu Qingyan steadied herself, he was already far away. Thus she lifted her skirt and chased after him. "Wait for me." Xiao Su ignored her. The young princess consort actually dared to make the lord wait for her? Servant A covered his eyes, waiting for the lord to get angry. "I owe my feet." Xiao Su stopped in his tracks when he heard the sound. He turned around and saw her smiling triumphantly. The young princess consort actually dared to trick the lord? Servant B covered his eyes, waiting for the lord to get angry. "Big ice cube, you walk too fast. I almost couldn't keep up." Chu Qingyan ran in front of him and complained. The young princess consort actually dared to complain about the lord. Servant C covered his eyes, waiting for the lord to get angry. Xiao Su glanced at her. "Your physical fitness is too poor." Chu Qingyan widened her eyes. He actually despised her physical fitness. Her legs weren't as long as his, and she was still a girl, okay? Seeing that Xiao Su was about to turn around and leave, Chu Qingyan immediately squatted down and hugged her calf. "It hurts. I walked too fast. The injury seems to be acting up again." Xiao Su looked at her suspiciously. You hurt this leg? Chu Qingyan looked down and realized that she had hugged the wrong leg. She decisively changed to another leg, and then looked up at him pitifully. Xiao Su thought it was funny, but he seemed to compromise a little. He walked up to her, grabbed her with both hands, and threw her on his back. Hold on tight. Understood. One was cold. One of them was pretending to be obedient after getting a bargain. When the servants released their fingers and saw this scene, their eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. Did the sun rise from the west? Is it raining red? Snow in June? Otherwise, were they dreaming? I have a donkey, but I never ride it. One day, I rode it to the market on a whim. I had a whip in my hand. Shut up. Okay. The sun shines in the sky, the flowers smile at me, the birds say good morning. Why are you carrying a bag of explosives? If you sing again, I'll throw you down. Understood. Xiao Su's eyes twitched. What was wrong with him just now? Why did he become so soft-hearted and carry this burden? In the study room in the middle of the night, Xiao Su sat behind the desk, half of his body hidden in the darkness. Today Ninth Miss Chu visited a rouge powder stall, a porcelain stall, a handmade toy stall. Turin reported everything in detail. Xiao Su tapped his fingers on the table and listened quietly. Then she met the eldest son of the Fu family, Fu Onlai, who was beating up an orphan girl. Ninth Miss Chu stood up to protect her, Turin said disapprovingly. Xiao Su said lightly, continue. Then, Master Su Jian appeared and stopped Fu Onlai. Ninth Miss Chu invited him to the tea house, but Turin paused hesitantly. But what? Xiao Su looked up at him. But Master Su Jian actually wanted to persuade Ninth Miss Chu to shave her head and become a monk. Turin reported truthfully. Xiao Su's fingers stopped tapping on the table. He frowned and said, become a monk? Turin nodded and reported the battle of words between the two of them in the tea house. After listening, Xiao Su's lips curled into a smile. As expected of one of his men, his eloquence could even make Su Jian dizzy. However, his smile quickly disappeared. He took this matter to heart. If it had been someone else, he would have ignored it. However, this person was Su Jian. He would not bring up this matter for no reason. Seeing that Lord was deep in thought, Turin stood still. After a while, Xiao Su came back to his senses and said casually, you seem to have a problem with Qingyan? Turin thought that he had concealed it well, but his master must have noticed something from the way he addressed her. He did not deny it and nodded. Master, it's not that I have a problem with her, but I can't treat her as the future mistress of the prince's residence. Xiao Su looked at him lightly. Her status has already been determined. You have to do it even if you can't. Turin sensed that his master was protecting her in his words. Although he resisted, he still agreed. I understand. Knowing that he was upset, Xiao Su said, she is the King of England's imperial consort, appointed by the retired emperor himself. If someone finds out about this, it will be considered disobeying the imperial edict. You know the consequences. Turin immediately understood that Lord was afraid that someone would take the opportunity to make trouble. He immediately bowed and said, I didn't think it through. I won't do it again. Xiao Su waved his hand and dismissed him. He sat quietly in the study for a while, his body covered in the frost of the night. Then he slowly walked out of the study and passed by Chu Qingyan's room, entering it out of habit. Chu Qingyan was still awake. Hearing his footsteps, she got up and looked at him apologetically. Big Ice Cube, there's something I need to tell you. I seem to have caused you trouble. About Fu Onlai? Chu Qingyan, who was thinking about how to tell him, was surprised. You know about it? Yes, it's nothing. Go to sleep. Xiao Su covered her with the blanket. Chu Qingyan forced herself to stay awake. She had wanted to talk to him about this matter, and since it had been resolved, she could finally relax and sleep. Xiao Su took a look at her sleeping face and got up to leave. There were too many grudges with the Fu family. This one did not make a difference. Ever since Xiao Su stopped restricting her freedom, Chu Qingyan was like a bird that had been released from its cage, flying everywhere. One day, the weather was good and she wanted to go out to play. She had wanted to ask Xiao Su to go out with her, but he had disappeared early in the morning. So Chu Qingyan dismissed the idea and went back to her room to change. She happened to run into Hong Yi in the corridor. Ever since Big Ice Cube punished Hong Yi because of Z, she rarely saw Hong Yi. She greeted Hong Yi embarrassedly. After all, she was the cause of the incident. Hong Yi did not seem to be affected by what had happened and replied politely, "Are you going out?" Chu Qingyan nodded. Then she thought of something and asked with a smile, "Does the Fu have men's clothing of my age?" Hong Yi shook her head awkwardly. "This servant does not have any on hand, but this servant can ask Qing Yi. She usually takes care of these clothes. This servant remembers that Lord did not wear some clothes when he was young. If Xiao Wangfei does not mind, this servant can take them out and use them. Why would I mind? This is already very good." Chu Qingyan said. So Hong Yi asked a servant to ask Qing Yi. The servant quickly came back. Qing Yi Jiejie said she does not have any. Hong Yi frowned. "Tell Qing Yi to come over and reply." The servant immediately left. After a while, Qing Yi's sharp voice came from afar. "Hong Yi Jiejie, why did you call me over in such a hurry?" Chapter 98. Qing Yi sauntered over. When she saw Chu Qingyan and Hong Yi standing together, jealousy flashed through her eyes. Then she smiled and curtsied to Chu Qingyan. "Greetings to little Wangfei." Chu Qingyan felt that this voice made the hairs on her body stand on end. She grinned slightly in response. She always felt that this Qing Yi was strange, and she still couldn't escape this feeling today. Hong Yi said with a smile, "I called you here for another matter. Aren't you in charge of Lord's daily clothes? Little Wangfei wants to go out and play. Maybe it's not very convenient to wear women's clothes, so she wants to find some men's clothes. I remember that Lord has several sets of clothes from when he was young that he hasn't worn. I wanted you to take them out for little Wangfei. So it's this matter." That servant didn't say it clearly, so I didn't understand. "He does have them." After Qing Yi finished speaking to Hong Yi, she turned and smiled at Chu Qingyan. "Little Wangfei, it's that servant's fault for not doing a good job. This servant will go find them for you." "Thank you for your trouble, Qing Yi Jiejie." Chu Qingyan obediently responded. Qing Yi walked towards the clothing pavilion. The moment she turned, the smile on her face turned into a vicious expression. She unwillingly went to get the clothes. After Qing Yi got the clothes, Chu Qingyan thanked her, and then returned to her room with Xining. Seeing Chu Qingyan leave, Qing Yi dropped her fake smile and said to the person beside her, "Don't you feel that she's gaining a foothold in the Wang Fu?" Hong Yi smiled slightly. "She's the future mistress. It's normal for her to gain a foothold." Qing Yi snorted coldly. "But you didn't notice that Lord is becoming more and more attentive to her. What do you think she has that Lord will treat her differently?" Hong Yi looked at her with confusion in her eyes. "Maybe little Wangfei has the ability to make Lord treat her differently. Why are you in such a hurry?" Being asked by Hong Yi, Qing Yi almost choked. "Only you can swallow this. I won't allow such a lowly woman to climb to the highest position in the Wang Fu." Hong Yi frowned. "Qing Yi, don't say that. If this reaches Lord's ears, I'm afraid you." Hong Yi didn't finish, but the two knew what the outcome would be. However, Qing Yi gave a fake smile. "Hong Yi Jiejie, I'll only say this to you. You won. You won't disregard our sisterly relationship and report me to Lord." Hong Yi sighed softly. "Qing Yi, you've been unable to control your mouth since you were young. Of course I won't say it, but you shouldn't go around spreading it. Otherwise, even I won't be able to protect you." Qing Yi chuckled with a hint of self-mockery. "Hong Yi Jiejie, do you think that after Chu Qingyan stabilizes that position, there will still be a place for us?" Hong Yi frowned slightly. Qing Yi didn't wait for her to reply and continued. "Do you still not understand Ziyi's situation? This Chu Qingyan is still young, but her schemes are not shallow. If it wasn't for her indulgence, would Ziyi have been taken back to be re-educated in less than 3 days? And because of this, you have lost face in front of Lord. I think this is just the beginning. As long as she has a certain amount of power, the first people she will get rid of are us 7 maidservants. Hong Yi Jiejie, you should also make plans early so that you don't end up in a bad situation." Qing Yi sighed, left a meaningful look, and then turned to leave. Hong Yi thoughtfully looked at Cheng Yi's departing figure, then revealed a faint smile. Cheng Yi wanted her to be the one to stand out, so she was trying to make her look bad. If she made the first move, she might be able to help her get rid of Chu Qingyan, this thorn in her side. But she wasn't an impulsive 15 or 16-year-old girl who could be intimidated by others. Hong Yi smiled and slowly left, as if nothing had happened. She didn't need to get involved in this muddy water. Chu Qingyan naturally didn't know what the two maidservants said after she left. After she returned to her room and changed her clothes, she felt that they fit her very well. She heard that these were the clothes that Big Ice Cube wore when he was 6 or 7 years old. Chu Qingyan looked at her own 10-year-old body and suddenly felt infuriated. She comforted herself that boys and girls grew up differently. She developed late, not underdeveloped. After comforting herself, Chu Qingyan pulled Xining out of the room. This time, the one waiting for her outside the door wasn't Turin, but Hualing. When Hualing saw Chu Qingyan come out dressed as a man, his eyes lit up. Such a beautiful young man. Faced with Chu Qingyan's wide eyes, Hualing came back to his senses. He gave a few soft coughs and said unnaturally, "Little princess, Turin isn't feeling well, so let Hualing come over to serve." Chu Qingyan looked at him suspiciously. Last time when father came, Hualing seemed to have used this excuse to trick Turin into guarding the study. Hualing didn't know that Chu Qingyan had seen through the back and forth between him and Turin. His heart was filled with resentment. Didn't he just scheme against Turin once? This time, he was tricked by him with the same excuse from before. Towards Turin, Chu Qingyan clearly had a much better impression of Hualing. At least Hualing was kind to her on the surface. Also, he and her father had a strong affection for each other before. Although this was just her own guess, it shouldn't be wrong. "Let's go, Hualing Darren," Chu Qingyan said to him with a playful smile, just like a child. Hualing's eyes twitched. He was a first-class fierce cavalry expert by the Lord's side. How could he suddenly be reduced to a little girl's manservant? In the words of old Master Chu, it was one thought to go to heaven and one thought to go to hell. But this was the task given by the Lord. He in turn did not dare to slack off. So no matter how proud he was of his identity, he could only be a follower right now. But what was worth consoling was that the person he was protecting was not low in status. At least, she was their future little princess, although it might be temporary. So the group of people went out again. A few days ago, after studying the tourist route of the capital, cough cough, it should be said that it was a list of interesting scenic spots. Chu Qingyan decided to go to the street by the east gate this time. She heard that there were many strange things there. If she liked to hunt for novelty, she could go there for a walk. Thus, Chu Qingyan led her men and headed straight for the eastern city gate. At this time, a purple-clothed figure swept over the high wall and quickly moved on the street. "Young master, that person is chasing after us," the black-clothed man beside him reported. The purple-clothed man frowned slightly. His charming eyes flashed with a strange light, faintly revealing his displeasure. "You bring 3 people to distract her. I don't want to see her." "Understood." The subordinates immediately received the order and quickly left. At this time, the purple-clothed man narrowed his phoenix eyes and randomly chose a direction. He lightly tapped his toes and jumped over. And that direction was also the east gate. Chapter 99. Hualing, Hualing, what do you think of this thing? Chu Qingyan felt that she had to have a good relationship with the people by Big Ice Cube's side, so she took out a hat and asked him. Hualing's eyes had been looking around the entire time. Hearing the little princess call him, he turned around and his lips twitched. "This green hat? Good looking," Hualing insincerely replied. "Really?" Chu Qingyan revealed a smile and instantly stuffed the thing into his chest. "I'll give it to you if you like it, no need to be polite." Hualing's eyes widened as he looked at the hat in his chest. Who would wear a green hat for no reason? Wouldn't they be laughed at by others? Then again, he didn't have a family yet, so wasn't the little princess cursing him? Chu Qingyan threw her hand at him and didn't care about him anymore. She was still looking for treasures, and when she finished, she turned around to find Hualing holding the hat frozen in place. She curiously asked, "Hualing, you don't like it?" I think it's pretty good. In the summer, yellow, pink, and green are very eye-catching and comfortable to look at. If you wear these colors on the road, you'll definitely attract the attention of many girls. It would attract many gazes, but that wasn't admiration, but rather sneering disdain. All right, little princess? But this was a gift from the little princess, so even if it was gold thread, he had to swallow it. I like it, I like it, I like it a lot. He liked it so much that he wanted to die. So Hualing held the green hat and wanted to cry. This was the first gift Hualing received from the little princess. It really was a day worth remembering. He a green hat. Along the way, Chu Qingyan bought many things for herself and the servants by her side, as well as some things for Big Ice Cube. But when she wanted to buy something else for Hualing, he had a face that said he didn't want it. Chu Qingyan instantly curled her lips. It was rare for her to come out, and Big Ice Cube gave her a lot of silver, saying that she could get more from the steward if it wasn't enough. She wanted to buy some things for the people by her side, but it was a pity that Hualing didn't appreciate it. Forget it, she would just buy it for herself. Along the way, they arrived at the gathering place. People came and went shoulder to shoulder, and it was very lively. Hualing, who had been paying attention to the surroundings, suddenly saw two black figures flash by on the roof. He narrowed his eyes and gave orders to the palace's guards before silently following them. It was rare for Chu Qingyan and Xining to come out to play, so they didn't pay attention to their surroundings. In addition, it was crowded with people, so they didn't notice that someone was missing. When Chu Qing picked up a mask and turned around to ask for the opinion of the people around him, he discovered that Xining, Hualing, and the others had already disappeared. Behind them was a stream of strangers. Hualing, Xining. Chu Qingyan called out a few times, but no one responded. Chu Qingyan raised her brows. Where did everyone go? At this moment, the stall owner asked, "Little prince, do you still want this mask?" Chu Qingyan turned around when she heard this. She raised the mask in her hand and replied with a smile, "I want this mask. Give me that mask too." She pointed at another mask. The stall owner agreed with a smile. After Chu Qingyan paid the money, she took the golden boy and jade girl masks and turned around to look for the missing people. But after looking for a while, she couldn't find a single person. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but frown. Perhaps they were also looking for her, while she was looking for them. How about she just wait for them here? Otherwise, what would she do if she got lost? After making up her mind, Chu Qingyan decided to find a safe corner and wait for them to find her. However, just as she took a step forward, a few children rushed towards her. The one in front knocked right into her waist, and she staggered a few steps back. The golden mask in her hand was knocked away, and it spun in midair before flying towards the entrance of a small alley. Chu Qingyan held her waist and looked at the naughty children with a helpless expression. Then she walked towards the alley. It was really when one was unlucky. Even walking on the road would cause one to be hit. Chu Qingyan had just picked up her mask and was about to blow away the dust on it when she heard a strange gust of wind coming from the quiet alley. Her heart skipped a beat. In novels, quiet alleys were the best places to kill and rob. Could it be that she had coincidentally bumped into one of them? Then she had to run quickly. She grabbed the mask tightly and didn't dare to look back. She pretended to be calm and walked back the way she came. Suddenly, the alley wind mixed with an inexplicable chill hit her. She felt a chill on her back. When she wanted to run, she couldn't break free from a force that hugged her waist. She widened her eyes and wanted to shout. The person seemed to have sensed her intention and covered her mouth with a hand. Her body stuck close to the person behind her, and with a spin, she flew up and landed on a sycamore tree nearby. The person holding her captive casually found a branch to sit down, and she sat in his arms with her back leaning against him. The dense leaves of the sycamore tree blocked her figure. From this angle, she could see the person below, but the person below couldn't see the person hiding here. Chu Qingyan's heart almost jumped to her throat, but she felt that although the person behind her was holding her hostage, he didn't do any harm to her. She calmed down a little. At this time, 3 or 4 figures appeared at the alley's entrance. The leader was a woman in red. Where is he? I clearly saw him coming here. How could he disappear in the blink of an eye? The woman in red was flustered and exasperated. Miss, young Master Dongting always comes and goes without a trace. This time we are so close. I'm afraid he will run away even more. The maid in black beside the woman in red immediately said. It was so difficult to find him, but he ran away again. It's so annoying. Next time I will catch him. The woman in red stomped her feet and angrily turned to leave with her people. Chu Qingyan's eyes widened as she looked at the scene beneath the tree. After the red-robed lady and her entourage had left, she realized that the hand that was holding her loosened. The person behind her was also not as tense as before. He seemed to have relaxed. At this time, Chu Qingyan heard the person behind her murmur, I finally got rid of this evil woman. The voice was charming, like a night elf singing in a low voice. Chu Qingyan sighed inwardly. What an elegant and magnetic voice. Since it was to get rid of people, it shouldn't be a threat to her. Chu Qingyan moved her body. The person behind her saw that and loosened his grip on her. Chu Qingyan wanted to turn her head, but suddenly stopped. What if she saw his real face? What if he became angry and killed her? So Chu Qingyan turned her back to him and said, Hero, can you send me down? Because she was disguised as a man, she called herself me. Hero. The person behind her repeated these two words with interest. It was the first time he was called a hero. He seemed to be very amused. He leaned close to her ear and chuckled. This young master is not a hero, but a demon. Demons only do bad things. So I'm only responsible for sending you up, not sending you down. His playful words made Chu Qingyan's shoulders stiffen, and the fragrance of the flowers was somewhat familiar. Chapter 100. Chu Qingyan didn't have time to think about the floral fragrance. She only felt that this person was so overbearing and rude. She said somewhat angrily, Since that's the case, then I'll go down myself. Chu Qingyan was too lazy to waste her breath with him. She looked down at the parasol tree that was at least 2 stories tall and swallowed her saliva. She hugged the tree trunk with both hands and was about to slide down. The person behind her didn't seem to expect her to do this. He raised his eyebrows and lifted her up, placing her back on the branch. Chu Qingyan only felt the world spin, and then she was changed in another direction. When she opened her eyes, she saw the person in front of her. When she saw the person clearly, she was stunned. His eyes were elegant, and his lips were bright and alluring. Wearing a purple robe coupled with those devilish phoenix eyes and charming temperament, he was simply an evildoer. The jade pool was second to none, and his zifu was unparalleled. She couldn't help but think of a poem. There was a beauty in the north, peerless and independent. A glance could topple a city, and another glance could topple a country. But when she saw that there was an Adam's apple on that smooth neck, she instantly widened her eyes. So this wasn't a beauty, but an evildoer youth. Recalling that someone had called him young Master Dongting, she finally recovered from the shock of the beauty being a man. Higashio Motetsu, who had long been accustomed to being stared at like this, raised his eyebrows. He put his hands behind his head and leaned against the tree trunk. He lazily said to her, If you want to cripple your leg, then jump. This young master won't stop you. Chu Qingyan was stunned for a moment. Then she looked at the person in front of her. This one has no grievances with you. It's this one's bad luck to be held hostage by you. If young master is willing to send this one down, then we won't owe each other anything today. If we meet again in the future, we'll go our separate ways. What does young master think? When Higashio Motetsu heard this, he finally looked at the youth in front of him. He was fearless in the face of danger, and moved with reason and emotion. It really didn't seem like the intelligence and rationality that a 10-year-old child should have. Red lips, white teeth, and fair makeup. It had to be said that the youth in front of him had a likable face. Higashio Motetsu playfully teased her. What if I'm not willing? The smile on Chu Qingyan's face stiffened. Then she became angry. You don't want me to go down and you don't want to send me down. What do you want to do? What I don't want to do is being willful. Higashio Motetsu. She didn't know when he had taken the mask, but he didn't to her face, revealing his charming phoenix eyes as his face. Her tis t to tattoos, she to reason to the points to Two, and not to waste her to speak. She also closed her eyes and leaned against the tree. Likes. To stop speak. He to her to stop. He twos to to he test that he, and then he to be mocked her. Twos. He to she. To be's to be towned by himself. Two. Don't tell me you don't want to go down? Chu Qingyan crossed her arms and looked at him. So what if I talk? So what if I don't talk? Don't tell me you'll let me go down if I talk to you for a bit? That's not impossible. Higashio Motetsu took off the mask on his face and smiled evilly. Chu Qingyan didn't want to bother with him. Maybe this person was bored to death and wanted to tease her. As long as she ignored him, he would feel bored and leave. Seeing Chu Qingyan's silence, Higashio Motetsu suddenly felt that this youth was really interesting. It was rare to see such a cute youth in Sichuan. Just as he was about to tease her again, he suddenly heard a few calls from below. Miss, Master. Hearing this voice, Chu Qingyan knew that Xining and the others had come to look for her. She immediately wanted to open her mouth and say that she was on the tree, but a hand suddenly appeared out of nowhere and covered her mouth. Her hands were locked behind her back, and the cold book cover couldn't suppress her anger. She angrily glared at the person in front of her and said to him with her eyes, "What do you want to do?" "Fun Willful." He answered her with his lips. When Chu Qingyan understood his lips, she was furious, but she knew that she couldn't do anything to him. At this time, Xining's voice had gradually faded away. Perhaps because she didn't respond, he thought that she wasn't here and went somewhere else to look for her. So at this time, Chu Qingyan simply ignored him. Higashio Motetsu felt those soft lips against his palm, bringing about an itch. He restrained himself and saw that those people had gone far away before he released his grip on her. His eyes looked at her playfully. "You're a girl?" Although it was a question, his tone was certain. "So what if I am? So what if I'm not?" Chu Qingyan indifferently replied. "Nothing much." Higashio Motetsu lazily leaned against the tree trunk, his hand still playing with her mask. He then looked up at her and asked with a teasing smile, "Little girl, why don't you follow this young master and travel freely?" Chu Qingyan tightly clung to the tree trunk behind her, looking at him with a vigilant expression. Seeing that Chu Qingyan was like a hedgehog with spikes all over her body, Higashio Motetsu suddenly smiled, like a rose blooming on a white jade wall, dazzling and frightening. "What are you afraid of? It's not like I want to eat you." The more he said, the worse it got. Chu Qingyan looked into his eyes and said disdainfully, "Follow by your side and be your servant girl? Eat and sleep in the open? Be hunted down all day long?" Higashio Motetsu seemed to have heard a funny thing, as he gave a low laugh and then clarified, "Following by my side. Even if you have the identity of a servant girl, you'll have a more comfortable life than a young miss of an aristocratic family. Eating and sleeping in the open is impossible. You'll only have a table full of fine wine and a table full of delicacies. Things like being hunted down will only happen occasionally." Chu Qingyan didn't know if what he said was true or false, but to her it didn't matter. She met his devilish phoenix eyes and said clearly, "This little girl still prefers a peaceful and steady life. Many thanks for young master's good intentions." Higashio Motetsu saw that this little girl was stubborn and felt that it was even more interesting. But seeing that it was getting late, he raised his hand and pinched her pink cheeks. "Forget it, I'll take it that you have eyes but can't see gold and jade." Chu Qingyan felt that this person's touch was really annoying. Just as she was about to slap his hand away, she fell into his embrace and jumped down from the tree. When she steadied herself, that person had already left. "Little girl, if fate wills it, we'll meet again." Chu Qingyan turned around and only had time to see that person's back facing her as he shook the mask in his hand. Then with a stomp of his feet, he turned into a purple wind and disappeared into the sea of people. Chu Qingyan pinched the jade maiden mask in her hand, feeling somewhat indignant. What a strange person. She hoped that they wouldn't meet again until they died of old age. But who knows, when you want to find a person, you won't be able to find them even if you climb over mountains. And when you don't want to see a person, you'll meet them wherever you go. However, many years later, that person's hand caressed the golden maiden mask, his expression complex yet gentle. When the golden wind and the jade do meet, It will surpass countless people in the human world. Chapter 101. When Chu Qingyan walked out of the small alley, she didn't know which direction to go to find Xining and the others, but she heard someone loudly calling out her name. She turned around and saw Xiao Ran standing in the sea of people. He was dressed in a blue robe of good quality, which made his handsome face look even fairer and clearer. After not seeing him for so many days, this brat had grown quite a bit. Seeing him, she couldn't help thinking of the description of Baoyu in a famous book in high school. Face like the moon in mid-autumn, color like the flowers of spring, hair like a knife, eyebrows like ink, face like a peach petal, eyes like autumn waves. She sighed in her heart. When this person grows up, he will definitely be a young girl killer. Looking at him now, he already has the capital to bring disaster to others. When Xiao Ran saw that it was really her, he quickly walked over to her and put his hands on her shoulders. He carefully looked her up and down, and when he saw that she was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief. Chu Qingyan was confused by his strange appearance. What's wrong? Xiao Ran saw that she still had a blank and fearless appearance, so his face immediately became serious. He reprimanded her. Do you not bring your brain with you when you go out? Do you not know your own status? You came out to play, and you didn't even let the guards follow you closely. If this prince didn't find you, where would you be wandering around? Her heart was already a bit shaken from being inexplicably held hostage, and now she was inexplicably angered by someone. Xiao Ran often brought up her low status to talk about things, so no matter how good Chu Qingyan's temper was, she couldn't handle what happened today. Her face immediately turned cold. If something happens to me, I don't need the fourth prince to worry. I know my own status, so there's no need for the prince to remind me again and again. Perhaps Chu Qingyan's tone was too harsh, but the moment she finished speaking, Xiao Ran, who was standing in front of her, was stunned. Chu Qingyan was vexed. It seemed like she had not cultivated well enough, and could not hide her temper. Xiao Ran was also confused because of his concern. He also regretted that he didn't control his temper. Looking at the youth in front of him, his eyes were filled with self-blame. Don't be angry. I only said that because I was anxious. Don't take my words to heart. Chu Qingyan was about to apologize, but saw that he was a step ahead of her to reflect. Chu Qingyan suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable in her heart. She thought of the previous 2 times Xiao Ran as a Sichuan prince would always inexplicably encounter some danger, so he was so cautious. It was because he treated her as a friend that he scolded her, worried that something would happen to her. Fourth prince, Qingyan is also wrong, please don't take it to heart. Seeing her soften her tone, Xiao Ran's heart relaxed. He waved his hand. Forget it, let's not talk about this. That's right. Why are you here? If I didn't go to the king's palace and heard that you came out to play and wanted to try my luck to find you, but I met Xining and Huoling who were looking for you, I wouldn't have known that you were lost. Tell me, if I didn't find you first, wouldn't you be crying? Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes at him. Do you think I'm an idiot? If I can't find the way, I can't ask people. With a mouth under my nose, I could have found the king's palace by asking people. Who would be stupid enough to wait until the sky turned dark? Xiao Ran felt that she was right, so he ordered a servant to report his safety to Huoling and the others. Then he walked side by side with Chu Qingyan. Is there anywhere else you want to play? Xiao Ran looked at the bustling crowd and his interest was piqued. After experiencing everything that happened today, Chu Qingyan was no longer in the mood, but seeing Xiao Ran's excited face, she felt that it wouldn't be good to ruin his mood. After all, he had come here to find her. What about you? What do you want to play? Chu Qingyan tilted her head and asked him. Xiao Ran shook his head in a daze. Although I grew up in the capital, I am completely unfamiliar with this place because Imperial Mother never let me leave the palace to play. She said that the people outside are sinister. The few times I sneaked out was to find you and eldest brother in the king's palace to play. As for other places, I've heard of them, but I've never seen them before. Chu Qingyan suddenly felt that it wasn't that easy to be a prince. Xiao Ran and Xiao Su were also like this. One was like a golden canary that was locked up in a magnificent palace, and the other was exiled to fight on the battlefield since he was young. Thinking of this, she sent a look of sympathy to Xiao Ran, but she did not expect him to be sharp enough to notice it. He protested the entire way. "Take back your eyes like you're looking at a puppy. Otherwise, do you believe that I won't dig out your eyeballs and make them into skewers?" Chu Qingyan did not believe his outwardly strong words. She pointed at the Tonghulu skewers and asked, "Does the fourth prince want to eat that?" "What is that?" Xiao Ran's eyes were instantly attracted, and he forgot what he wanted to say before. "Tonghulu, it's sweet and sour." Chu Qingyan did not forget to give it a little advertisement. "It looks pretty good. Xiangyu, buy it for this prince." Xiao Ran immediately said to the servant beside him, "Yes." Xiangyu immediately went to carry out the order. After a while, Chu Qingyan turned her head to look at Xiangyu, who was carrying the Tonghulu skewers. She then looked at Xiao Ran, who was holding the Tonghulu skewers in his left hand and right hand. She suddenly felt like Granny Lu entering the Grandview Garden. Xiao Ran saw that she was looking at him and ordered Xiangyu, "Pull one out and give it to Qingyan to eat." "Yes." Xiangyu pulled one out from the straw skewers on her shoulder and handed it to Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan looked at the Tonghulu skewers in her hand and then looked at the strange gazes everyone was giving her. She suddenly felt like she couldn't eat anymore. She really was drunk. How was she supposed to go shopping while carrying such a large Tonghulu skewers? After strolling around the streets for nearly an hour, Hualing had already brought people to pick her up. Thus, Xiao Ran reluctantly bid farewell to her with his mouth full of syrup. Chu Qingyan really wanted to pretend she didn't know this person. Wasn't it clearly said that this Xiao Ran was a young genius? Was it something that only appeared once in 100 years? Why was he like this in front of her? Were the rumors wrong? Was this the typical high IQ and low EQ? After waving her hand to send off Xiao Ran, Chu Qingyan and Hualing returned to the king's palace. On the way back, Hualing did not explain why he suddenly disappeared and she did not ask. Returning to her room, she comforted Xining, who was crying because she couldn't find her. Chu Qingyan thought about her experiences over the past few days. She didn't know what kind of disaster she had attracted recently. Every time she met someone, if they didn't want her to become a nun, they wanted her to become a maidservant. So she decided that it was best if she didn't go out for the next few days. It was safer for her to be a beautiful woman and stay by the big ice cube's side. At least the cold air coming from the big ice cube's body was enough to make those demons and monsters retreat. However, there were some things that even if she didn't go out to look for them, they would still find her. For example, the sudden imperial edict. Xian Emperor, who had nothing to do, suddenly wanted to see his little daughter-in-law. Chapter 102. After returning to the prince's residence, Chu Qingyan felt a little uneasy. She walked through the corridor and arrived at the study. The door was wide open, and she looked past the decorations to see the figure sitting behind the desk. She felt as if she had found someone to rely on, and immediately walked towards him. Xiao Su heard her footsteps, but did not look up as he asked, "Did you get lost?" Chu Qingyan stopped in her tracks, and her expression was a little unnatural. This big ice cube is really annoying. His ability to tease people is really getting better with each passing day. "I'm not lost, I was just careless." Chu Qingyan thought for a long time, but did not know how to continue. Xiao Su smoothly helped her finish the sentence. "You were careless and lost all your servants? You really are capable." Chu Qingyan smiled embarrassedly, and then walked to his side. She stretched her head to look at the book in his hand. It was a military book. She pursed her lips. "You always wake up early to go to court, and come back to read and write. Don't you feel bored?" Xiao Su raised his eyebrows and looked at her. "That's how it feels in your eyes." Chu Qingyan ignored his teasing, and leisurely wandered around the study. "Come here," Xiao Su suddenly said. "What is it?" Although Chu Qingyan asked, her body still walked over of its own accord. "Pick one for yourself." Xiao Su looked at the stack of books on the table. Chu Qingyan did not know what he meant, but she still casually picked a book from the stack of books on the table. The three-character classic? She looked at the other books. Rules for Disciples, the Analects of Confucius, Mencius. What for? Chu Qingyan asked in confusion as she waved the book in her hand in front of him. Take a good look. Xiao Su saw that she had nothing to do all day and was afraid that she would not be able to accomplish anything if she continued like this. Because the books on his bookshelf were too profound, he was afraid that she would not be able to understand them. Thus, he had people search for suitable reading materials for children for her to read. You want me to learn this? Chu Qingyan found it hard to believe. You have a problem with that? Xiao Su asked. Chu Qingyan didn't dare to say anything after receiving his coercion. However, she had read the 3-character classics since she was a child. The books on the table didn't give her any pressure at all, okay? But if she reported the truth, would she be treated as a monster by the ice cube? At this time, White Tiger walked in with 2 servants carrying a table and chair. After greeting his lord, White Tiger instructed the servants to set up the table and chair. Chu Qingyan stared dumbfoundedly at the table and chair that were one size smaller than Xiao Su's. She suddenly had a bad premonition. Was it too late for her to slip away now? Xiao Su glanced at her, and she stood at attention. From now on, you will study and learn how to write here. That one sentence determined her dark days in the future. Chu Qingyan wanted to cry, but no tears came out. She could only accept her fate. She couldn't run up to him and say that she had studied these books in high school. Xiao Su looked at her. She wanted to resist, but she did not dare to say anything. In the end, she just obediently read the book and smiled in satisfaction. At this time, Hualing and Turin walked in. However, when they saw Chu Qingyan sitting on the side, their expressions became a bit strange. Greetings to Master. What is it? Xiao Su looked at his 2 subordinates in front of him while paying attention to her reading. Hualing looked at Chu Qingyan and was a bit hesitant. Xiao Su said indifferently, It's fine. Speak. Seeing that their master did not hide anything from Chu Qingyan, Hualing and Turin looked at each other. In the end, Hualing still took a step forward to report. Master, I saw black-clothed people on the streets of the eastern part of the city today. This subordinate followed them, and after fighting with them, I discovered their martial arts and the assassins that chased after them. This subordinate believes that these people are in cahoots with the assassins that tried to assassinate the 4th prince. Moreover, this subordinate discovered that these people seem to come from a very hidden sect called the Moon Palace sect. It is also a sect that people in Jianghu talk about. This Moon Palace sect is very good at assassinations and poisons. They are highly respected by the royal families, and even officials of various countries. They have always received commissions to take on assassination missions, but the price is very high. It is not something that normal people can afford. Moreover, the palace master of the Moon Palace sect rarely appears in the world. Even now no one knows where this Moon Palace sect's stronghold is. Turin reported all the information he had received. Xiao Su's finger lightly tapped on the pages of the book. Since this Moon Palace sect has always been hidden and has appeared in the capital, they must have other movements. Continue to investigate and report to me if there is any new information. Yes. Turin and Hualing both responded. Xiao Su's gaze fell on Chu Qingyan as he lightly said to Hualing and Turin, If there is nothing else, you can leave. Turin and Hualing simultaneously glanced at Chu Qingyan, who was pretending to be seriously reading, before respectfully leaving. At birth, a man's nature is good. Their natures are similar, but their habits are different. If one does not teach, their nature will change. The way of teaching is to specialize. Hualing and Turin walked out of the study. The 2 of them were silent. In the end, Hualing spoke first. Turin, do you think that Master cares too much about the little princess consort? You are not blind. Turin glanced at him. Ignoring the mockery in Turin's words, Hualing frowned and said, Do you think it is good to continue like this? Turin looked at the sky. There were many white clouds. When a gust of wind blew, they began to float. No one knew where the clouds would drift to. I also do not know. If Master does not want that position, then it is fine. I am just worried that if Master ascends to that position in the future, she will not be able to help him at all. Turin said faintly, Big Ice Cube, I am hungry. Can I go eat dessert? You have only read a few pages. Continue. The people in the room started talking one after another. Turin and Hualing had complicated expressions. But now that she is here, Master seems to be more humane. He no longer doesn't care about anything. Hualing said softly. Turin was silent. At this moment, White Tiger hurriedly walked towards the study. Is Lord in the study? White Tiger asked the two of them. Yes. Housekeeper, is there something urgent? Hualing replied. Someone from the palace is here. White Tiger knocked on the study door after speaking, and went in to report. Chu Qingyan was still desperately reading. She knew that the Big Ice Cube had gone out. When he came back, he told her to go back to her room to change clothes and prepare to enter the palace with him. Enter the palace? Chu Qingyan thought she heard wrong. Do you have a problem? Xiao gave her a cold look. Chu Qingyan suddenly had the impulse to beat her chest and stomp her feet. Wasn't everything fine? Why did she suddenly have to enter the palace? I suddenly got an illness that prevents me from entering the palace. Chu Qingyan grabbed the corner of the table and said pitifully, I will give you 15 minutes. Xiao ignored her cries and left her with this last sentence before stepping out of the room. The Big Ice Cube was so cold-blooded. She really did not want to enter the palace. She subconsciously rejected it. But she still had to enter the palace. Chapter 103. Chu Qingyan looked up at the sky and let out a long sigh. She could only resign herself to her fate and change her clothes. Why did the Sichuan emperor not summon them earlier or later, but now of all times? Chu Qingyan looked at the sky. Could it be that he wanted to invite her and the Big Ice Cube to dinner? With this thought in mind, she changed her clothes and got on the carriage to enter the palace. Big Ice Cube, do you think His Majesty summoned us for something? Chu Qingyan couldn't hold back her curiosity, and raised her head to ask the person who was resting with his eyes closed. Xiao calmly replied, This prince isn't sure either. Big Ice Cube, then tell me, what kind of person is your imperial father? Is he easy to get along with? What should I say and what shouldn't I say when I go? Chu Qingyan suddenly felt nervous. She realized that she was about to meet the person who held the highest authority in the Xixian nation. The person who held absolute power over her life and death. Emperors only existed in history books and on television screens. She had never thought that she would have the chance to meet a living person like this one day. However, Chu Qingyan, who was immersed in her own emotions, didn't notice that Xiao's expression changed slightly after she asked, What kind of person? In reality, he didn't know either. After he turned 10, his impression of his imperial father had become fainter and fainter. Whether his imperial father had ever praised him, affirmed him, or shown him a smile, he had already forgotten all of it. Or rather, he didn't have the heart to remember it, and it was subsequently forgotten in the depths of his memory. It wasn't until the young girl in front of him blinked her large eyes that he pulled himself out of his thoughts. The less you say, the less you make mistakes. It's good that you don't do anything. Chu Qingyan was stunned. Was this how the Big Ice Cube handled things? But when she stared at Xiao, she discovered a different kind of emotion surging in his eyes. It wasn't as cold as usual, and there was a hint of melancholy. Her heart couldn't help but clench. She moved closer and carefully asked, Big Ice Cube, what's wrong? Did I say something wrong? Xiao lowered his head and looked into her eyes. They were clean and clear, like a curved stream, so clear that he could see the bottom. The strange grief in his heart slowly dissipated in her stream. He raised his hand and stroked her head, sighing softly. So the less you say, the less mistakes you make. Tisk. Chu Qingyan immediately turned her face away. Big Ice Cube must be teasing her. Xiao curled his lips and his mood improved for no reason. However, this girl seemed to be becoming more and more open with him. Was this a good thing or a bad thing? Xiao was a little puzzled. At this time, the carriage suddenly stopped moving forward. Chu Qingyan immediately looked at Xiao. Gu Yi's voice came from outside the carriage. Lord, it's the second prince. The second prince? Xiao. That dissolute and unrestrained prince? Chu Qingyan's mind instantly flashed with the image of a dispirited man with green eyes who indulged in sensual pleasures. It was said that this second prince did not love his country, but loved beauties. Therefore, Chu Qingyan was very curious about this second prince who was rumored to be excessively licentious. Amen, Xiao calmly replied. Thus, the carriage's curtains were pulled up from the outside. Chu Qingyan sat inside the carriage and opened her eyes wide to look around. She wanted to see this famous second prince. I say, eldest brother, you're really not a good friend. You've been back for so long. I asked you to come to my residence for a visit, but you refused. You've really made this subject brother very sad. Before Chu Qingyan could see anyone, she heard a leisurely and casual voice coming from the side of the carriage. Just by listening to this voice, it was clear and bright but also free and easy. It was hard to associate this voice with the rumored licentious second prince. As soon as the voice fell, the person riding the horse also arrived in front of the carriage. The person was dressed in a green robe, his black hair held up high by a golden hairpin. The front of his robe was slightly open, revealing his exquisite collarbone. He was leaning against the back of the horse with a relaxed expression. Only when he looked at Xiao did he become alert. What a dissolute and unrestrained man. The smell in your residence isn't good. Xiao did not give him any face and directly replied. Xiao Yao was stunned at first, but then he understood the meaning behind his words. He couldn't help but laugh loudly. Eldest brother, what's wrong with the smell of those rouge powders? They're soft and tender and alluring, with cherry lips and willow waists. They're fat and thin. They have a unique taste. Speaking up to here, Xiao Yao seemed to have thought of something and smiled at him. That's right. Eldest brother has never liked those vulgar powders. How about this subject brother wait for the next time I come across a peerless beauty, and invite the eldest brother to my residence for a chat. Xiao coldly looked at him. Just mind your own business. Ben Wang doesn't need it. Chu Qingyan looked in disbelief at the person in front of her. He could actually say such things in front of so many people. It really was as the rumors said, indulging in sensual pleasures. But it was a pity that such a good body was wasted. But Chu Qingyan looked at this person. Even though his words were full of laughter, his eyes were very bright. She faintly felt that this person was not as he appeared on the surface. Eldest brother really hasn't changed at all, Xiao Yao said uninterestedly. Then he thought of something and poked his head into the carriage to look. Right, I heard that you are very fond of that little princess. Have her come out for me to see if she's a feast for the eyes. Xiao raised his eyes to look at him. Stop before you go too far. Xiao Yao suddenly shivered. Eldest brother's eyes seemed to have frozen. It really was frightening. He did not go any further. He stroked the horse's mane with one hand, his expression still mischievous. I heard that today, that person mentioned your little princess in Fu Huang's ears. So Fu Huang had a sudden impulse to bring you to see her. Xiao did not respond, but it was clear that he had heard it. All right, the night of spring is short. Chen Di still has to go see the beauties. I wish you a safe journey. Xiao Yao leisurely waved his hand at them. Then he raised his whip and leisurely led his attendants away. Who was that person? Why did Xiao Yao not point it out? Why did he wish them a safe journey when they were just going into the palace? Also, his seemingly casual words were not really casual. Chu Qingyan did not know what Xiao Yao's words meant, but there seemed to be a hidden meaning. Because she saw that after the big ice block heard those words, he became silent. Chu Qingyan tugged at his sleeve, wanting to ask him about it. It's fine. Xiao patted the back of her hand, and then ordered the carriage to continue forward. The curtain of the carriage fell, and covered the light of the setting sun. Chu Qingyan looked thoughtfully at the person in front of her, and then suddenly spoke. After I enter the palace, I will definitely listen to you. If no one asks, I will not speak. I will be careful and will not cause trouble for you. Xiao heard this and looked at her. He saw the seriousness on her little face, and knew that she had guessed something from Xiao Yao's words. He suddenly smiled and raised a hand to touch her face. No need. If there is a problem, Ben Wang will take care of it. His fingers were slightly rough as they caressed her cheeks. He quickly withdrew his hand, but the gentleness didn't immediately disappear from her cheeks. Only then did she realize that she seemed to have been taken advantage of just now. And it was the big ice block. It really was too surprising. But when the big ice block smiled, his eyes were very beautiful. It was a pity that his face was covered by the mask and she could not see his face. She was not happy. Chapter 104. After another quarter of an hour, they arrived at the palace gates. Chu Qingyan got off the carriage and looked at the towering palace walls. She couldn't help but sigh at Big Ice Cube. This was the first time she had seen such a tall wall in her life. Xiao Su's face darkened when he heard this. He grabbed her collar and walked into the palace. Chu Qingyan didn't know that his face would change so quickly. She must have been seeing things when he was so gentle in the carriage just now. After entering the palace, there was a wide road paved with green bricks. Along the way, there were guards every 5 steps and a small imperial guard every 10 steps. There were no flowers or trees, only cold armor. Chu Qingyan looked at the heavily guarded palace and sighed inwardly. As expected, this was the most important place in the country. Even a fly couldn't get in. But she quickly looked away and warned herself that from the moment she entered the palace gates, she had to be careful with her words and actions. Therefore, she couldn't look around right now. Big Ice Cube's status in the imperial family was already a bit delicate. Now she couldn't bring trouble to him. After passing through a place that looked like a square, and passing through a corridor, there was a eunuch waiting there to lead the way. Greetings to His Royal Highness. An old eunuch without a beard bowed to Xiao Su. Looking at his attire, he should be a eunuch with some status in the palace. Eunuch Xiao, sorry to trouble you to wait, Xiao Su said lightly. I don't dare. Eunuch Xiao turned to look at Chu Qingyan with a smile and then asked, This is the 9th young miss of the Chu family? She's so smart and cute. Originally, he wanted to say that he and Prince Ing were a match made in heaven, but looking at their height and age, no matter how eloquent he was, he didn't dare to say it out loud. Xiao Su said to Chu Qingyan, This is Imperial Father's favorite, Eunuch Xiao. Chu Qingyan obediently bowed. Hello, Eunuch Xiao. This servant doesn't deserve such praise. Eunuch Xiao hurriedly avoided Chu Qingyan's bow. He originally thought that since Chu Qingyan was only a 10-year-old child from the countryside, her words and actions would not be presentable. However, when he saw her standing beside the King of England, looking straight ahead with a slight and well-behaved smile on her face, if he did not know the inside story, he would have thought that she was a young lady from an aristocratic family. However, he had to admit that this Chu Qingyan's appearance was outstanding. At least among these aristocratic families, she could be said to be one of the best. Let's go. Xiao Su didn't like small talk, so he said coldly. This servant is confused. His Majesty should be anxious from waiting. Please follow this servant. Eunuch Xiao bowed and raised his hand to point in the direction. Xiao Su then led Chu Qingyan forward in large strides. The vermilion pillars of the palace seemed to extend forward without end. Passing through the walkway, they turned and walked onto the white arch bridge. What entered their sight was a long corridor built on the surface of the water. Rippling waves of the lake surrounded the bottom. Fields of lotus leaves, either in clusters or in large patches, made the entire lake exuberant because of the greenery. From afar, they could see the palace hidden in the green leaves. The corridors were winding. The eaves were high, each hugging the terrain and fighting against each other. Chu Qingyan felt a kind of oppressive atmosphere and sternness coming towards her. It wasn't until they stopped in front of the main hall that Eunuch Xiao bowed and said, Masters, please wait a moment. This servant will go and report. Xiao Su nodded slightly. After Eunuch Xiao left, Chu Qingyan finally dared to size up the surrounding buildings. Dignified halls rose and fell one after another, closely intertwined like fish scales. And the high hall in front of her seemed to be the core of all the halls. It was clustered around, and the glittering golden glazed tiles all revealed its nobility and majesty. Imperial Study. The 3 large words were written in thick ink on a red plaque with golden patterns on the edges. It was noble and dignified. And under each pillar, there was an imperial guard with a blade standing there expressionlessly. The security was very tight. After a while, eunuch Xiao came out. However, Chu Qingyan noticed that his expression was unnatural. She couldn't help but be curious. Could it be that the Sichuan emperor didn't want to see them? Reporting to His Royal Highness, His Majesty is currently testing the fourth prince's homework. Please wait here for a moment. Eunuch Xiao revealed a troubled expression. It's fine. We'll wait. Xiao Su didn't seem to care at all. Eunuch Xiao bowed to them and entered the palace. This wait lasted for an hour. The sky was getting dark, and the afterglow of the setting sun was about to cover the mountaintop. At this time, Chu Qingyan began to feel a little strange. Xiao Su was the first prince and the eldest son of the first wife. He should be treated well. Why did he have to wait outside the palace after hearing the order to rush over? Big ice block, how long do we have to wait? Chu Qingyan raised her head and asked. Xiao Su lowered his head and said indifferently, tired of waiting? No, I just don't know how long we have to wait. Waiting was sometimes a kind of enjoyment, but waiting for an unknown amount of time was something that would end. Moreover, she had to continue waiting. It was inevitable that her heart would feel a little hopeless. Seeing her rubbing her hands, Xiao Su asked in a rare attentive manner, Are you cold? No. Achoo. Chu Qingyan nodded with an embarrassed smile. Actually, she didn't want to admit it, but she didn't know that her body was so honest. Although it was midsummer, the wind in the palace was colder than outside. She didn't know if it was proof, but the palaces of each dynasty were built on yellow earth and white bones. Those unwilling souls would occasionally blow the eerie wind in any corner of the palace. Xiao Su saw that she didn't mean what she said. He couldn't help but laugh and reached out to hold her small hand. Chu Qingyan didn't know what he wanted to do. His body temperature was clearly lower than hers. Could it be that he wanted to use poison to fight poison? To use ice to cure ice? Chu Qingyan was amused by the random thoughts in her mind. It was also at this time that a warm current flowed from her palm into her blood. It then circulated throughout her body, warming up her veins and making her entire body feel warm. Chu Qingyan felt like she was soaking in a hot spring. She was like a satisfied kitten. She narrowed her eyes and sighed as she asked, Is this internal strength? It can kill enemies and keep out the cold? Emotions were contagious, especially when the small hand in his palm was tightly holding onto his fingers, as if he was her support. Xiao Su's voice also became gentle. Big Ice Cube, teach me in the future. Chu Qingyan felt that if she knew martial arts, she would be able to protect herself in the future. Moreover, she would be able to keep warm. Xiao Su seemed to have seen through her thoughts and poured cold water on her. If you can wake up at 3 in the morning, train for at least 6 hours a day, and persevere through the harsh winter and scorching summer, then this prince will consider teaching you. 3 in the morning? Converted to modern time. Wouldn't that mean waking up at 4 or 5 in the morning? Training for at least 6 hours a day? Once she thought of being exposed to the scorching sun during the summer, and her hands freezing in the cold wind during the winter. She immediately shook her head like a rattledrum. Xiao Su already knew that she would have this reaction. She was used to being a lazy cat. She would even cry when asked to read a book, so how could she suddenly become diligent? 3 feet of ice was not formed in a single day. If you want to learn, you have to persevere. As for you, in this king's opinion, it will be very difficult. Chu Qingyan puffed up her cheeks. She really wanted to nod and agree that she could do it. But once she thought of the consequences of being impulsive, she immediately stopped that thought. If she spoke too fast, the one who would suffer in the end would be herself. Xiao Su saw that she reacted and couldn't help feeling that it was a pity. He wanted to stimulate her. If she could really learn some martial arts, then that would be good. Big Ice Cube, why do you think His Majesty still hasn't summoned us? It was almost time for dinner. Impatient? He asked. Would you? She asked. Used to it. He lightly replied. Used to it. Chu Qingyan unconsciously looked at him. Was he used to waiting, or was he used to being left out like this? Was it because this kind of thing happened too often, so he was used to it? Chu Qingyan didn't know why, but a corner of her heart ached. Chapter 105. Chu Qingyan reflexively tightened her grip on his hand. Xiao Su could feel the strength in her small hand, and couldn't help but lower his head in question with his eyes. He saw that her eyes were filled with the afterglow of the setting sun, gentle and warm. It doesn't matter. In the future, I'll wait with you. It's too lonely to be alone. Two people can talk. Xiao Su was slightly startled. Then he raised his hand and placed it on her head. The hair under his hand was as soft as silk. He only quietly stroked it without speaking. Chu Qingyan also didn't speak for once. She silently gazed at the palace door in front of her. Suddenly, she heard the sound of the palace door being pulled open. Then she saw a youth dressed in a pure white round-collared silk robe being respectfully escorted out of the palace door by palace servants. Xiao Ran. In the imperial palace, Xiao Ran's brocade robes were exquisite and magnificent, different from the simple and noble aura he wore outside the palace. Xiao Ran clearly saw the person outside the palace. His serious little face instantly bloomed with a smile. He quickly walked over, but when he saw the two hands clasped together and his eldest brother intimately placing his hand on Chu Qingyan's head, he suddenly felt uncomfortable. He had never experienced this kind of feeling before. The smile on his face instantly froze. At this time, Eunuch Qiao also came out of the palace door. He bowed and smiled at the two people who had been waiting for a long time. His Majesty invites you in. Xiao Su nodded at his fourth brother, who was walking over. Chu Qingyan's heart was in her throat because of the Sichuan Emperor's summons, so the two of them didn't notice that something was wrong with Xiao Ran. Xiao Ran turned around and watched the two of them walk into the palace side by side. Only when the palace door closed did he come back to his senses. He clenched his fists in self-abandonment. What was wrong with him just now? After entering the palace, Chu Qingyan secretly looked around. There was a silver-gilded incense burner, which was as tall as a person, leaning against the corner, emitting incense. The four-sheep square was placed on the table, and the Chongqing Palace lantern was hanging high. Under the light of the lantern, the finely polished jade horn cup shone with a gentle and tranquil luster, like a magnificent work of art. No matter which corner it was, it showed a noble style. Greetings, Imperial Father. Xiao Su knelt down with Chu Qingyan. Greetings, Your Majesty, she said respectfully beside him. Have you been waiting for a long time? A voice came from ahead. Although he said this, Chu Qingyan didn't hear the slightest bit of apology in his voice. She raised her head and saw a man wearing a golden crown. He wore a bright yellow robe with large sleeves, and a yellow sleeveless robe with a curved collar. The collar and sleeves were decorated with golden embroidery, and the two shoulders were embroidered with dragon patterns. He sat upright on the dragon throne, dignified and incomparably noble. Chu Qingyan focused her eyes and saw the Sichuan Emperor's appearance. He had a high nose bridge, thick ears, a tall and sturdy figure, and sword-like eyebrows and tiger-like eyes. The appearance of an emperor was obvious. Not bad. While secretly sizing him up, Chu Qingyan heard the person beside her calmly reply, "This is the girl of the Chu clan?" The Sichuan Emperor turned to look at Chu Qingyan, who was slowly getting up, and raised his eyebrows slightly. "Yes," Xiao Su replied. "Raise your head and let Chen have a look." The Sichuan Emperor ordered Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan obediently replied, "Yes," and then raised her head. The West Xian Emperor had seen countless people, and when he saw Chu Qingyan's delicate features, he knew that she would definitely become a beauty in the future. The West Xian Emperor couldn't help but frown. However, when he thought about her lowly status, he smiled again and said insincerely, "Not bad, not bad. Your emperor grandfather has a good eye for women." Chu Qingyan's mouth twitched. This person in power really knew how to talk nonsense. The Emperor Emeritus hadn't even seen her before. So how could he say that he had a unique eye for a wife? Wasn't he just lying through his teeth? "Many thanks to Imperial Grandfather and Imperial Father for your love," Xiao Su replied calmly. "Although Qingyan is young, you still have to take care of her. Don't only care about yourself and play with swords all day long. I don't even know what you're blindly busy with," the Sichuan Emperor said indifferently. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sneer. Although the Sichuan Emperor said that he wanted Xiao Su to take care of her, his words were actually mocking him. She didn't understand how the Sichuan emperor saw that Xiao Su was blindly busy. Haven't I been ordered around by you all day long? She felt a little indignant on behalf of Xiao Su, but his status was there. If he was right, then he was right. If he was wrong, then he was right. Xiao Su's eyes darkened. I understand. After teaching Xiao Su a lesson, the Sichuan emperor turned his attention to Chu Qingyan. I heard that Ranner has been getting along well with you recently? Chu Qingyan wasn't prepared for the Sichuan emperor's question. She was a little startled, but her thoughts quickly connected the dots. She immediately replied, the fourth prince is very approachable. He gets along well with the people in the King of England's residence. The Sichuan emperor finally looked at Chu Qingyan. She actually understood the meaning behind his words. He didn't know if she was really smart or if she had just answered by accident. The Sichuan emperor didn't answer Chu Qingyan. Instead, he looked at Xiao Su. Your fourth brother's homework has been tight recently. If there's nothing to do, don't let him play at your place. It's not worth it if his studies are delayed. Chu Qingyan was about to explode. Which eye of yours saw the big ice cube let your precious fourth prince come to the residence? It's clearly his favorite, okay? Don't confuse right and wrong, okay? The younger generation doesn't like you when you act like this, okay? Chu Qingyan suspected that this old man didn't want to see her at all. He just wanted to use this opportunity to teach her and the big ice cube a lesson. She didn't mind, but she didn't know that the big ice cube's heart. I will pass on your message, Xiao Su replied methodically. The Sichuan emperor choked. He knew that he had already taught him enough lessons tonight, so he suppressed his anger and didn't continue. Then the two of them started asking questions and answering questions. Chu Qingyan was stunned. The way this father and son interacted with each other was worse than the way a small family interacted with each other. The Sichuan emperor was neither cold nor warm, while Xiao Su replied in a businesslike manner. Was this the kinship of the imperial family? But didn't she hear the occasional laughter of Xiao Ran and the Sichuan emperor outside the hall just now? Could it be that the rumors were true? That Xiao Su lost his favor because his face was disfigured? However, the Xixian emperor quickly turned his attention to the affairs of the imperial court, and the two of them began to discuss the autumn examination. Chu Qingyan's gaze fell on the two of them. If she didn't know that they were father and son, she might have thought that they were just superior and subordinate. Chu Qingyan quietly played the role of a beautiful young girl for an hour. In the end, the Sichuan emperor's cold and sharp gaze fell on the two of them. Your imperial mother probably hasn't seen Qingyan before. Bring her to see her. As soon as the Sichuan emperor finished speaking, Chu Qingyan saw Xiao Su's lips twitch imperceptibly. She suddenly had a bad feeling about Empress Liang, who she had only heard of but never seen. After leaving the palace, Chu Qingyan raised her head and looked hesitantly at the person beside her. Big Ice Cube. Will your imperial mother dislike me? She knew that Empress Liang came from the left prime minister's family, and should have high expectations for her son's wife. Don't worry about it, Xiao Su said coldly. That meant that she didn't like her. And she didn't like her very much? Chu Qingyan suddenly had a bad feeling about this meeting. Chapter 106. Eldest Brother Qingyan. Chu Qingyan's thoughts were interrupted by this shout. Turning her head, she saw Xiao Ran standing in the corridor, looking at her with bright eyes. Fourth Imperial Prince. Chu Qingyan curtsied towards him. Originally, the two of them did not have such formalities in the prince's residence. However, she had just been warned by Sichuan Emperor not to lead his precious son astray, so she had learned to be careful. After all, this was the imperial palace, and Sichuan Emperor's spies were everywhere. Xiao Ran had already seen the two of them when they walked out of the hall. However, the two of them seemed to be immersed in their own world, and a third person could not enter. At this time, Chu Qingyan's distant and polite appearance made him feel that he was even further away from her. This made him feel even more uncomfortable. Eldest brother, you probably haven't eaten yet, right? Why don't you come to this subject brother's palace to eat together? Xiao Ran approached the two, wanting to use the distance between them to close the gap. Xiao Su said indifferently, no need. Imperial father just finished teaching you. Go back and rest early. We still have to make a trip to Chaoyang Palace. Xiao Ran looked at Chu Qingyan. The latter smiled and nodded at him, but her smile was still faintly distant. Xiao Ran was a bit disappointed. In the end, he reluctantly agreed. Then this subject brother will go back first. If there is anything, you can summon a palace maid to find this subject brother. Xiao Su nodded, then turned and left with Chu Qingyan. Xiao Ran looked at the two's backs. Something seemed to melt in the depths of his heart. It was a bit sour. Xiang Yu. This subordinate is here. I seem to be sick. This subordinate will report to Consort you right now, and send someone to summon a grand physician. No need. Perhaps it's a mental illness. I don't understand it, but it's not a physical illness. Xiang Yu looked at His Highness with a puzzled expression. His Highness had always been full of confidence, but for some reason today, it was tainted with melancholy. The 12-year-old Xiao Ran didn't know what it was like to be in love, but he had already started to worry. The silhouettes of the two people on the ground seemed to be snuggling up to each other intimately. Chu Qingyan felt even more uncertain after hearing Big Ice Cube's words. Halfway there, she suddenly tugged at the sleeves hanging down by her side. Big Ice Cube, it's so late. Why don't we go back first and find time to visit your mother next time? You can escape now, but you can't escape forever. Xiao Su saw through her thoughts and directly exposed her. This prince never knew that you were a coward. Oh ho, he's actually trying to goad me. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but look down on him in her heart. He really treated her like a 10-year-old child. However, she had to admit that he wasn't wrong. Luo Yun glanced at Chu Qingyan, who was silently standing next to His Highness, and then said, The Empress knew that your Highness was coming and was originally very happy, but when she heard that you brought... Luo Yun paused and then continued with tacit understanding. So the Empress said to ask you to go back. She doesn't want to see other people. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she wanted to laugh. She felt that power, status, and wealth were sometimes very important. It was so important that people could immediately judge the likability of people they had never met. It was very unfortunate that she had been slapped to death on the beach at the first opportunity, and the palace maids had purposely ignored her. But the slight tightening of her hand made her smile knowingly. Xiao Su frowned. His Muhu never left any leeway when she spoke, so he said without hesitation, Then this Wang will bring Qingyan to see you another time. Luo Yin stilled. She thought that the Empress' meaning was clear enough, but she didn't think that Xiao Su would still do as he pleased and bring Chu Qingyan to see Nyang at another time. It was during this time that Xiao Su led Chu Qingyan out of Chaoyang Palace without hesitation. The journey was silent. Xiao Su wasn't used to her silence. Angry? Hearing this, Chu Qingyan pulled herself out of her thoughts and said mischievously, If I say I'm angry, what will you do? If I say I'm not angry, what will you do? If you're angry, endure it. If you're not angry, it's fine. Chu Qingyan couldn't help being amused. She pretended to be angry as she said, Hey, I'm at a disadvantage like this. You don't know how to comfort people at all. Isn't this Wang by your side the best comfort? A tone that said, Don't you dare say no. Chu Qingyan couldn't help laughing. It was like the big ice block had been dyed with smoke and fire by her. Just as she was about to say something, a eunuch walked over. Greetings to His Royal Highness. Her Highness Consort you invites you in. Chapter 107. Her Highness Consort you? Chu Qingyan subconsciously looked toward Xiao Su. Wasn't this Xiao Ran's mother? Why did she suddenly summon them? What did Consort you say? Xiao Su couldn't help but frown. Her Highness heard that His Royal Highness brought Miss Chu into the palace, so she wants to see her. The eunuch respectfully replied. Xiao Su's eyes were a bit cold. Lead the way. Yes, this way please. The eunuch immediately stepped aside, then bent down and pointed towards the main road behind him. Chu Qingyan followed Xiao Su and slowly walked in the opposite direction of where they came from. The bad feeling in her heart grew stronger and stronger. She couldn't help but suspect that her sixth sense came from Consort Yu, who she had never met before, and not from Empress Liang, who had rejected them at the door. If you're hungry, endure it for now. When we go back, I'll have Huang Yi prepare your favorite dishes. Xiao Su noticed that the expression of the person beside him was a bit ugly. He knew that she was already impatient and wanted to leave the palace, so he couldn't help but comfort her. As soon as Xiao Su spoke, the eunuch leading the way felt a chill run down his spine. Did he mishear? Did that gentle voice just now come from the mouth of Sichuan's coldest and most ruthless lord? Was he hearing things? Chu Qingyan shook her head. Just now, the big ice cube had promised to protect her. She had always doubted people and never doubted people. The big ice cube gave her a strong sense of security that made her believe him without a doubt. When I go back, I can eat many bowls of rice. I want to have Huang Yi make braised lion's head, spicy chicken wings, jade hibiscus soup, swallow grass biscuits. No, if I keep talking, I'll be even hungrier. Chu Qingyan smacked her lips. She was really making things difficult for herself. Xiao Su's originally cold eyes were dyed with a slightly warm light because of her muttering to herself. Okay, as you wish. Chu Qingyan raised her head and smiled at him. At this time, the two of them had already passed through several palaces until they reached a sparkling and translucent palace. Compared to the magnificent and domineering Zhaoyang Palace they had seen before, this Yu Palace seemed small, but every building was very exquisite. The palace maids guarding the entrance of the hall seemed to have received instructions. When they arrived at the entrance, they opened the door and welcomed them in. When they were outside, Chu Qingyan had already let go of Xiao Su's hand. She followed closely behind Xiao Su, cautiously and curiously observing their surroundings. It had to be said that this consort really knew how to live her life. Along the way, peony flowers paved the way on both sides, and the front was covered by laurel trees. Only after they had passed through the trees could they see the palace behind the shade of the trees. The glazed tiles sparkled under the setting sun, sparkling and translucent. It had to be said that if one had not seen Zhaoyang Palace before, they would definitely think that this was the main palace of the harem. Xiao Su greets consort Yunyang Yang. When the large ice cube's calm voice sounded in her ears, Chu Qingyan finally saw the person sitting on the chaise lounge in front of her. Her eyes were like crescent moons. She was delicate and beautiful, and her skin was white like cream. Her hair was combed into a cloud, and there was a jade peony hairpin in her hair. Although she was over 30 years old, she looked like she was in her 20s. It was no wonder that this person was known as the world's #1 beauty. Fu Yuyue, consort Yu, who was doted on by 3,000 people. Chu Qingyan curtsied towards her. Consort Yu Nyang Yang, may I wish you good luck? Suer is too polite. Is this the Chu family's little girl? She really looks like the water spirit. Consort Yu had already noticed Chu Qingyan when she entered the hall. Although she was young, her eyes were like water. Although she was young, her beauty had already begun to show. This made consort Yu jealous. If she was 10 years younger, her skin would definitely be more lustrous and white than it was now. Perhaps it was because women understood women. When consort Yu said this, Chu Qingyan clearly felt a chill run down her spine. Consort Yu Nyang Yang, this little girl is the Chu family's Qingyan. Consort Yu is worthy of being called the world's #1 beauty. Even Qingyan does not dare to raise her head and blaspheme your face. Chu Qingyan gracefully stepped forward and introduced herself. Since the big ice cube had already said that he would protect her, then she had nothing to be afraid of. She might as well be a little more generous and avoid being criticized. When consort Yu heard Chu Qingyan's words, she felt much happier. Who didn't like to hear praise? Moreover, it came from a 10-year-old child. She was young and not good at lying, so this proved that she was more sincere than those bootlickers. As a result, consort Yu's brows relaxed slightly. This little imp is quite clever. What a sweet mouth. Hurry and sit down. Try these bayberries that were sent from outside the palace, and see if they're sweet. As consort Yu spoke, she gestured for the two of them to sit down. Then a palace maid quickly brought over tea. This consort heard that you brought Qingyan into the palace. This consort thought that if we missed this opportunity, it would be a long time before we could see Qingyan again. Thus, this consort summoned the two of you. I hope this didn't cause you any trouble. Consort Yu smiled as she spoke to Xiao Su. No. Xiao Su took a sip of tea and said indifferently. Perhaps it was because Xiao Su was always this cold and cheerless in front of them, so Consort Yu wasn't dissatisfied. She turned to Chu Qingyan and said, Qingyan, you're still young and don't understand many things. I don't think you've heard of the rules of the palace. If you have any questions in the future, you can come to the palace to find this consort. Chu Qingyan felt a little funny. Although Empress Liang didn't like her, when it came to teaching, it shouldn't be her turn. However, Chu Qingyan still agreed. Thank you, Consort Yu. Qingyan will remember this. Truly obedient and clever. A few days ago, this consort had the Ministry of Internal Affairs prepare a few sets of clothes suitable for you. This consort originally wanted to have someone send them to the King of England's Fu. Since you're here today, you can try them on. If they don't fit, this consort can have the Ministry of Internal Affairs directly change them. As she spoke, Consort Yu stood and pulled on Chu Qingyan's hand. She turned toward Xiao Su with a radiant smile and said, Su'er, I'll borrow your little princess. I'll return her to you later. Xiao Su glanced at Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan bit her lower lip and nodded at him. Although Xiao Su was a bit worried, he still nodded at Consort Yu. Thus, Consort Yu pulled her into the inner hall. Chu Qingyan obediently followed. Chu Qingyan thought that in the inner hall, this Consort Yu probably wouldn't so brazenly play any tricks. But when the palace maid handed over the clothes, Chu Qingyan clearly saw the hint of a smile on Consort Yu's lips. She couldn't help but furrow her brows. This is the bright moon jade that Ben Consort picked out for you. It suits your complexion very well. Consider it Ben Consort's gift to you. Consort Yu picked out one of the boxes that the palace maid handed over and handed it to her. Chu Qingyan reflexively wanted to refuse, but she couldn't refuse an elder's gift. She could only brace herself and give her thanks as she accepted it. But when the bright moon jade was in her hand, she suddenly felt her fingers go numb. She could only watch as it fell to the ground and broke into 2 pieces. This was something that His Imperial Majesty bestowed to Master. You actually broke it, cried a fierce-looking mama next to Consort Yu. Chu Qingyan's mind was instantly alarmed. She immediately turned to Consort Yu and explained, Your Highness Consort Yu, Qingyan didn't do it on purpose. Our Highness was kind enough to prepare clothes for you. But you were blinded by greed and stole Her Highness's head ornaments. As expected, you're from a small family and can't be seen in public. Imperial Concubine Yu's trusted palace maid Jade Rabbit angrily glared at Imperial Concubine Yu as she taunted her. Her ability to lie through her teeth was simply perfect. Qingyan, you've truly disappointed Ben Consort. Imperial Concubine Moon's eyes were filled with disappointment as she looked at her. Everything seemed to be her fault. Chapter 108. Upon hearing Consort Yu's words, Chu Qingyan suddenly had the urge to snort coldly. So trying on the clothes was just a pretense. The real reason was to frame her. She was still too naive. As expected, this world of palace intrigue wasn't suitable for her. Your Highness Consort Yu, how has Qingyan offended you? Please tell me. Chu Qingyan raised her head. Her expression was no longer as naive as before. Since the other party had already so brazenly framed her, what was there to be reconciled with? Consort Yu's hand that had been stroking the hair in front of her chest paused. She looked towards Ji Yunshu mockingly. What are you saying? How could this consort wrongly accuse someone? In the end, you and Ranner get along so well that he sneaked out of the palace to look for you in the King of England's residence multiple times. For his sake, this consort would treat you well no matter what. Speaking up to here, Imperial Concubine Moon looked at her with a bit of melancholy, but her eyes were filled with malice. It's a pity that you're too disappointing. Even if you don't like the bright moon jade this concubine gave you, you shouldn't have broken it. If word of this gets out, it doesn't matter if this concubine loses face, but you've implicated Su'er. If outsiders knew that he had such an ignorant princess consort like you, where would he put his face? Chu Qingyan curled her lips. What a venomous beauty! What a dignified reason! Wasn't it because she couldn't control her own son that she was using this as an opportunity to beat her? Ji Yunshu suddenly understood who Xiao was talking about. It seemed that she and Big Ice Cube were able to enter the palace completely thanks to this person in front of her. Your Highness, how should we deal with this girl? Asked the fierce-looking mama. Imperial concubine Moon regretfully said. What she broke was a treasure bestowed by the emperor. If His Majesty were to learn of this, he would surely punish her. If I were to deal with this, His Majesty wouldn't pursue this matter. Then let me be the villain. Nanny Rong, drag her away and flog her 50 times. Consort Yu then turned to look at Chu Qingyan and said hypocritically, don't blame me for being ruthless. If I don't teach you the rules, you'll have more chances to make mistakes in the future. I'm doing this for your own good. As soon as she finished speaking, Nanny Rong ordered 2 palace maids to hold Chu Qingyan and said in a strange tone, Miss Chu, I'm sorry to offend you. Take her away. Chu Qingyan's hands were held behind her back. She looked coldly at Consort Yu and sneered. If you have a mind to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. She knew that it was useless to say anything now, so she gave up on the useless struggle. She knew that the Big Ice Cube was outside. As long as she was outside, she would have a chance of survival. Otherwise, she was afraid that she would have to play chess with the King of Hell. When Consort Yu met her gaze, she was slightly startled. It was as if she could see Xiao Su's cold eyes on her. She was a bit flustered, but her expression quickly turned stern. Drag her away. They left the inner hall and went to the outer hall. However, other than the 2 people's cold teacups, there was no one else. When Consort Yu saw Chu Qingyan's gaze land on Xiao Su's seat, she smiled in understanding. Are you waiting for Su, or to come save you? It's a pity that he was summoned over by His Majesty just now, so you should obediently accept your punishment. Chu Qingyan bit her lower lip. The last trace of hope in her heart had been extinguished. She should have known that in order to punish her, Consort Yu would definitely send the Big Ice Cube away. She slowly clenched her fists and her eyes darkened. She didn't have superb martial arts skills to break free of these people. She didn't have the supreme authority to intimidate these people. In transmigration dramas, those female leads with golden fingers came back from the jaws of death and were omnipotent. Unfortunately, they weren't her. The long bench was already in front of her. The eunuch holding the torture stick was approaching. Then how was she going to save herself now? Outside the Moon Hall, a figure slowly walked over. It was Xiao Ran, who had heard that his eldest brother and Chu Qingyan had been invited to the Moon Hall. Your Highness, Fourth Highness, you aren't reading in the hall, and instead came to find Imperial Concubine Moon at this time. Imperial Concubine Moon will punish you. Maid Luliyue, who was following beside him, nagged at Xiao Ran. Because he could see Chu Qingyan, Xiao Ran was in a good mood. He casually said to Luliyue, it's fine. Imperial Mother loves me so much. She won't punish me for such a small matter. But Consort Yu specifically instructed you to stay in the hall. If you, Xiao Ran's personal bodyguard, Emma Wang, hadn't finished speaking when he was interrupted by Xiao Ran. No buts, don't say anything. If you still have so much to say, you can return to the hall on your own. Xiao Ran was a bit impatient. He was most annoyed by not being allowed here and there. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have brought them along. It was better to talk less in the rain. Luliyue and Emma Wang, who were disdained by their highness, looked at each other and immediately fell silent. Although Consort Yu sent them to take care of His Highness Fourth Prince, their direct master was His Highness Fourth Prince. If they angered him, they might not be able to continue their duties. After his ears were cleared, Xiao Ran strode to the entrance of the Moon Hall. As he approached, his mood slowly became nervous and expectant. Today he didn't have a good chat with Qingyan. When he went back, he felt it was a pity. Now that they were going to meet again, he began to think about what to say when the time came. Emma Wang and Luliyue had never seen His Highness so hesitant and excited before. They were a bit confused. His Highness was always serious when he went to the Moon Hall, so why was he acting so strange this time? When Xiao Ran arrived at the Moon Hall, the expressions of the palace maids and eunuchs guarding the entrance suddenly changed. No one expected that His Highness Fourth Prince would suddenly arrive. Quickly go and report that His Highness is here. After Xiao Ran finished speaking, he was a bit impatient. Forget it, His Highness will go in by himself. After saying that, Xiao Ran walked into the hall by himself. The palace maids and eunuchs on duty immediately blocked his way and said with a hurried expression, "Fourth Prince, Her Highness is receiving an important guest. You should leave first. Wait until the important guest leaves, then you can come back, okay?" Important guest? Xiao Ran smiled in understanding. What kind of important guest are eldest brother and Qingyan? Even His Highness often goes to find them to play. Move aside, let His Highness enter. This is Her Highness's order. Fourth Prince, please don't make things difficult for us servants. The palace maids blocked the entrance and said in a low voice, but their tone was very firm. Xiao Ran narrowed his eyes sharply. Mother usually doesn't restrict His Highness from entering the Moon Hall. Could it be that something happened inside? The palace maids were momentarily speechless. His Highness Fourth Prince had always been smart, but they didn't expect him to see through it so quickly. Xiao Ran was originally probing with words, but the palace maid's reaction immediately made his face darken. As expected, he guessed correctly. Move aside, otherwise don't blame His Highness for being impolite. Xiao Ran ordered with a cold expression. The palace maids trembled and silently moved aside. Then, Xiao Ran strode past them and headed to the front of the hall. One of the palace maids immediately said to the person beside them, "Quickly go and report to Her Highness that His Highness Fourth Prince has entered the hall." Inside the imperial study, Xiaosu couldn't help but feel a trace of unease. He narrowed his eyes and looked in the direction of the Moon Hall. Chapter 109. Both of her hands were tied up with ropes. The palace servants were all well trained and strong, so she didn't have the strength to struggle at all. Nanny Rong placed her large hand on her shoulder and roughly pinned her down onto the bench. She was young and immature, so she wasn't a match for these people at all. Her shoulders were burning with pain and her knees hit the bench, causing her legs to stiffen. She gritted her teeth and didn't allow herself to scream. She didn't have any martial arts skills to protect herself, so she didn't have the right to say no. She suddenly felt very sad. She felt that she hadn't adapted to the rules of survival in this era. So she always ended up in trouble. The smoky red dress appeared in front of her eyes. She raised her head slightly and met Consort Yu's mocking gaze. That day on the streets of the capital, you were able to save that girl. But have you ever thought about who would save you today? Child, sometimes you shouldn't be too naive. Today, this consort will teach you some principles of life. That day, she had already received a message from her younger brother. Chu Qingyan dared to go against the Fu family, because she had Xiaosu behind her. Therefore, she wouldn't allow Xiaosu to become even more arrogant. Imperial concubine Moon, for you to treat a 10-year-old child like this, don't you feel apologetic? Although she was sad, the most important thing right now was to protect herself. She was already trapped, and the only thing she could do was to stall for time until Big Ice Cube came to save her. Otherwise, she didn't know if she could withstand 50 strikes with her current body. Feel bad. What is 10 years old? Consort Yu raised her eyebrows and smiled cruelly, like a viper. 10 years ago, this consort was. Just as she opened her mouth, Consort Yu saw the light in Chu Qingyan's eyes and stopped talking. How could she say what happened that year so easily? She was the one who had planned the fire that year. Unfortunately, he still managed to escape, but it was no different from being crippled. Chu Qingyan looked at her suspiciously. What happened 10 years ago? Consort Yu bent down and reached out to touch Chu Qingyan's face lovingly, but she turned her head away. Consort Yu was not angry. Instead, she said gently, "Are you trying to stall for time and wait for Sewer? Don't worry, he won't be back every hour." Then Consort Yu stood up and ordered the guards, "Begin." Consort Yu, Chu Qingyan suddenly said. Consort Yu stopped halfway and turned to look at Chu Qingyan. "Is there anything else you want to say?" Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and looked at her. Her eyes were bright. Even the Empress is wary of using private punishment in the palace. Consort Yu nyang nyang. Are you trying to abuse your power for personal gain? Consort Yu bent down and patted Chu Qingyan's face. Her tone was smug. Chu family's little girl. What do you think this consort relied on to sit firmly in the Moon Palace? Chu Qingyan frowned. Then, she thought of the peony flowers she saw when she entered the Moon Palace today. The peony flower was the king of flowers. Since ancient times, it had symbolized the empress of the country. It was an outstanding beauty. However, Consort Yu dared to plant this flower in the front hall. And it was even a garden full of flowers. It was clear that she was ambitious. She was not satisfied with her current position, but it was also clear that she had a place in Sichuan Emperor's heart. There were rules in the palace. The empress, concubines, princesses, and princes all had their expenses regulated. Therefore, she was able to plant these flowers right under the empress's nose. Presumably, Sichuan Emperor allowed it. Otherwise, with Empress Liang's personality, she definitely wouldn't let it go. Consort Yu's backer was Sichuan Emperor. When she realized this, Chu Qingyan suddenly understood why Consort Yu dared to frame her so brazenly. Was she fearless? But was she really fearless? But aren't you worried that if His Highness the Fourth Prince knew that you treated his friends like this, what would he think of you? Consort Yu sneered. Don't make a final struggle. If you want to use Ranner as a shield, then this consort advises you not to waste any more effort. Ranner will never know what happened today. As for the 50 beatings, you won't be able to escape. Is that so? Consort Yu originally didn't want to take it seriously, but when she heard Consort Yu's determined tone, she couldn't help but frown. Then, she noticed that Consort Yu was looking past her, and behind her. She immediately felt something, and turned her head. The shocked expression of the person behind her immediately jumped into her eyes. Ranu. Consort Yu's beautiful face turned pale. Mu Fei, what are you doing? Xiao Ran pointed a trembling finger at Chu Qingyan. His voice was also trembling as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Imperial concubine mother is teaching her a lesson. She disobeyed her superiors and broke the treasure your imperial father bestowed. So imperial concubine mother gave her a light punishment. Imperial concubine Moon's panic upon seeing her son was instantly put away, reversing black and white. Giving her a light punishment? Was 50 paddles just a light punishment? Even an adult would be half dead after 50 beatings. Qingyan is still a child. Xiao Ran's eyes widened. He couldn't believe that these words were coming from his normally gentle mother. Consort Yu heard this and her eyes narrowed. Ranner, are you questioning Mu Fei for an insignificant outsider? Xiao Ran's heart tightened. He had always been filial to his Mu Fei and respected her. Perhaps it was because what he had seen today had surpassed his understanding of his Mu Fei, and his mind was in a mess. Now that his Mu Fei had said this, he was afraid that his Mu Fei would be sad, so his tone immediately softened. Mu Fei, Qingyan isn't an outsider. She's Ai's friend. She's young and doesn't know any better, so can you be magnanimous and not bicker with her? The relationship between people was like a spring. If you were strong, they would be weak. If you were weak, they would be strong. So when Xiao Ran softened his tone, Consort Yu became firm. She thought of the news she had received before. It seemed like Chu Qingyan had really bewitched Ranner. Right now, Ranner was still young and couldn't tell. Once they grew up, no one knew what would happen in the future. She wouldn't allow Ranner to get involved with this lowly girl. So, she had to nip everything in the bud. A country has its laws and a family has its rules. Mu Fei can't make an exception for this matter. Consort Yu said firmly. Then she said to the person holding the weapon, start the execution. Xiao Ran immediately ran over and stopped the eunuch. He turned to his Mu Fei and said sadly, Mu Fei, as long as I is here today, I won't allow you to hurt Qingyan. After speaking, Xiao Ran said to Chu Qingyan, who was lying on the bench, Qingyan, don't be afraid. I'll protect you. Chu Qingyan's eyes reddened slightly. Thank you. Consort Yu saw the interaction between the two and was furious. She said to the eunuch who was hesitating, what are you waiting for? Pull the fourth prince away. Yes. This prince wants to see who dares. As soon as Xiao Ran finished speaking, he was grabbed. Anger appeared on his face, but he couldn't break free no matter how hard he struggled. He glared at his Mufei and said hoarsely, "Mufei, you can't do this. You can't do this. Ranner, don't interfere in this matter." Since they had already come this far, they couldn't give up halfway. Consort Yu raised her hand and gave the order. Xiao Ran was pulled to the side by several tall and strong guards. Xiao Ran watched as his Mufei ordered the eunuchs to carry out the execution. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "Mufei, you can't do this." His Mufei wanted to make a move on his only friend, but he couldn't do anything about it. Sorrow welled up in his heart. "Qingyan, Consort Yu, stop." A cold and harsh voice rang out. "You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.